Chapter 630. When Lan Feng, who was upstairs, was confused. Nongzhu knew that Yu Qianqiu was here. Why did she say she didn't know? She tilted her head and looked at Yu Qianqiu for help. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Since she knew he was here, there was no point in delaying, so he left through the window, as he didn't get a satisfactory answer. She didn't want to interrogate her master in front of so many people, so she said to Furong, "Let's go up and look for him." "No need." Yu Qianqiu walked down the stairs with a smile. Zi shouted excitedly, "Big liar." As a result, Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. How could she call him a big liar in front of so many people? How could he put his face? Fortunately, Furong was gentle and lovely. She ran to hold his arm and immediately restored a smile on his face. He held Furong's shoulders and took a good look. He smiled faintly and said, "Are you all right over there?" Furong nodded with a bright face and said, "Good. That's good. I'll talk to you later." Yu Qianqiu held her hand and let go. Furong nodded and stood aside obediently. It was this gentle and harmonious scene that made many people envious. Lu Yanqing didn't know when she had also walked to the window and was silently watching below. When Lan Feng tilted his head and looked, Yu Qianqiu looked at the temptress of 100 charms. When he was about to walk over, Zi stopped him and asked excitedly, "Big liar, when did you come?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and asked word by word, "Who's the big liar? Please pay attention to the way you address me." If it weren't for Nongzhu's covetous eyes, he would have turned hostile on the spot. Zi didn't care and wasn't angry. She smiled and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, how much money did you cheat while I was away? Remember to treat me later." Nongzhu looked at her daughter and was speechless. She was indeed a little rude. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could seal her mouth. Every time they met, she would not say anything nice. Taking a deep breath, he squeezed out a smile and said, "You're getting married soon. I forgot to congratulate you. Have you received the congratulatory gift that I asked your master to bring for you?" "Marry?" Zi opened her mouth wide and was stunned. Nongzhu wished she could cover Yu Qianqiu's mouth with her own. Zi was going to get married? Why hadn't Nongzhu mentioned it before? When Lan Feng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other, then they disappeared from the window and suddenly appeared in the courtyard, causing a group of people to salute them. "Nongzhu, what do you mean?" When Lan Feng asked somewhat unhappily, "Zi's marriage is such a big matter. Why have I never heard you mention it? Could it be that you looked down on me when Lan Feng?" Lu Yanqing also said unhappily, "Nongzhu, we watched Zi grow up. Don't tell me we don't even have the qualifications to drink a cup of wedding wine? Who said I'm getting married? Why didn't I know?" Zi said blankly. Nongzhu could not explain, so she simply put the blame on Yu Qianqiu and said, "Don't listen to this boy's nonsense. He doesn't speak the truth." Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu again. They were very suspicious, as if they were doubting his honesty. Yu Qianqiu's personality was that of someone who would twist words and force logic even if he didn't suffer a loss. How could he stand being wronged like this? F***ck, he cursed on the spot. "Who's talking nonsense? You were clearly the one who told me that." "Oh." Yu Qianqiu suddenly revealed an expression of sudden realization. "I understand now. You must have come up with a reason for Ziyi's marriage in order to swindle my treasured sword. I was wondering why I didn't hear anything before." Then he pointed to Nongzhu and said to Zi, "Zi, look carefully. Your master is the real liar." "Shut up." Nongzhu was embarrassed into anger and said, "Who cheated you of your sword? You're ruthless. I can't explain it to you." Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand and said coldly, "Give me back my sword. Don't tell me you didn't take it." "Who took your sword?" Nongzhu shouted angrily. The two of them quarreled directly and both of them argued. The people present did not know who was telling the truth and who was lying. Those who did not know that Yu Qianqiu's master was Bai Changchun admired Yu Qianqiu's courage. He dared to contradict Nongzhu, who was in the spirit-severing stage. "Boy, if you keep talking, believe it or not, I will kill you." Nongzhu directly began to threaten. "Kill me? I'm afraid it won't be that easy." Yu Qianqiu rolled up his sleeves directly as if he was going to fight. When Lan Feng could not stand it anymore and immediately shouted, "Shut up, all of you. Stop arguing. Yu Qianqiu, is this the sword you were talking about?" Ziyi held an ancient sword in her hand and shook it. When Lan Feng glanced at it casually and his pupils suddenly shrank. Lu Yanqing's eyes were also looking at the sword through the green gauze. "Yes, it's this one. Give it back to me." Yu Qianqiu reached out to grab it. Ziyi pouted and threw it directly back into her storage bag. Then a black light flashed in her hand and a purple-black bamboo stick appeared. She shouted, "Hit." Without warning, she directly hit Yu Qianqiu's head. When she raised the bamboo rod, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have a telepathic connection and guessed where she was going to strike. With a whoosh, he dodged to the side and roared, "You're crazy!" Ziyi's stick missed Yu Qianqiu's body and she was slightly stunned. Her cultivation was not a little higher than Yu Qianqiu's. In addition, it was a close-range sneak attack. It was reasonable to say that it was difficult for him to dodge with his speed. Unexpectedly, he seemed to be able to predict it and actually dodged in advance, anticipating the enemy's first move. When Lan Feng, Lu Yanqing, and Nongzhu looked at each other and were somewhat surprised. They all saw that Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed, but in advance as if he had predicted it. It should be known that in a battle, being able to predict the enemy's first move was a great advantage. It was often a matter of life and death. This was a kind of sharp intuition given by God, or precious experience accumulated after a long period of fighting. Not everyone could have this kind of intuition. And some people, even if they fought for a lifetime, could not understand a thing or two in this aspect. To be exact, people who had this kind of magical intuition could be described as people who were blessed by God. Even if the three of them had reached the soul formation stage, it was difficult to use this intuition in a fight. Maybe they could occasionally see it, but they would doubt it and dare not follow their intuition unless they had to. After all, if they made a wrong step in a fight, the consequences would be unimaginable. Maybe it was a coincidence. The three of them secretly said in their hearts, "Fight." Ziyi's attack missed and she was not satisfied. She flashed and rushed to hit again with the stick. Although she did not see anything on the surface, she was stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words. When her master gave her the sword, he said that it was a gift from Yu Qianqiu, which made her very happy. Who knew that when she met Yu Qianqiu, he wanted to take back the sword. She was very unhappy to take back the thing that was given to her, so she had to hit Yu Qianqiu to vent her anger. F***ck. Before Ziyi could move, Yu Qianqiu let out a ghastly cry and once again dodged to the side in advance. Ziyi immediately pounced on empty air. He dodged in advance again. When Lan Feng and the other two looked at each other in surprise, Ziyi missed. Before her feet touched the ground, she dodged to the side and chased after Yu Qianqiu. She was hurt by this big liar. How could she be satisfied if she did not hit him with the stick? However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He suddenly twisted his body and moved to the side. Ziyi's bamboo stick brushed past his back and missed. Even Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know why he suddenly did this. In any case, his body followed his heart's desire, and his body followed a flash of thought. When he really heard the sound of dodging, he rejoiced. This girl was stubborn and did not know how to control her strength. If she really hit him, it would be embarrassing. At first, Furong thought that the two of them were joking. However, when she saw Ziyi continuously chasing after Yu Qianqiu, it did not seem like a joke. Furong immediately asked anxiously, "Ziyi, why are you hitting him?" A purplish-black light left Ziyi's hand and shot towards Yu Qianqiu with a whistling sound. The more Ziyi could not hit him, the angrier she became. She actually used her sword to control the bamboo stick to chase after him. She was fast, but Yu Qianqiu's reaction was not slow. He did not even turn his head and bent down. A gust of wind swept over his head. However, before he could raise his head, he subconsciously dodged to the side and the bamboo stick that shot back was dodged again. A purplish-black shadow shuttled around the courtyard, forcing Yu Qianqiu to jump up and down, dodge left and right and jump back and forth. He did not even have the chance to speak. However, the shadow could not touch him. The purplish-black shadow always brushed past him. When Lan Feng and the other two were dumbfounded. They did not feel that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed at all. Instead, it was as if they had seen something incredible. Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed. He dodged in advance every time based on his intuition. Even if the bamboo stick suddenly changed direction, he could still react in advance. It was incredible that he could use intuition to this extent. Unfortunately, when Bai Changchun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, Nongzhu was not there. If he was there and heard Bai Changchun's words, he would not be so surprised. When Bai Changchun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, he said that this incantation was not very powerful. The secret of mastering it was reflected in the 4 words foresight. Once one was proficient in it, it would benefit him for the rest of his life. Ziyi busied herself for a long time, and her face was filled with astonishment. She suddenly put away her bamboo stick and stared at Yu Qianqiu as if remembering something. When Bai Changchun had said those words, she had been there, and now she remembered. "You're so stubborn. Is there something wrong with your brain?" Yu Qianqiu finally had time to speak. He rolled up his sleeves and said fiercely, I am the strongest master below the deification stage and I am not weak. You forced me to do this, so don't blame me for being rude. His face was ferocious like a hungry wolf about to eat a lamb. He was ready to fight back. Have you mastered the animal play? Zi pointed at him and asked in a daze. Why do you care what I have mastered? Animal play? Yu Qianqiu shouted halfway and then stopped. His face froze and he suddenly recalled the scene just now. It seemed that he had been dodging based on intuition. Chapter 631. Recalling the process of dodging earlier, he recalled what Bai Changchun had said when he taught him the animal moves. When he saw the animal world in the Jade Archive, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After listening to Bai Changchun's words, he decided to give it a try. Although he was just giving it a try, he still put in a lot of effort because he had full trust in Bai Changchun. Whenever he was free, he would put his heart and soul into it. He couldn't say that he was very proficient, but he was pretty much done. To be honest, after practicing for so long, he really didn't find any benefits. However, he found that the more he practiced, the more his movements resembled those of the animals in the mountains. He didn't dare to show it in front of others as it was too embarrassing. However, some things were always like this. The effort he put in would not go to waste. Yu Qianqiu stood there and smiled foolishly. He was pleasantly surprised. Animal moves? Nongzhu's eyes lit up. She raised an eyebrow and rubbed her chin. Her expression was unpredictable. When Lan Feng took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu, then asked Nongzhu, was it he who taught you the magic incantation? When she said the word he, she slightly paused. Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed as she stared at Nongzhu. Nongzhu nodded with a sinister smile. Yu Qianqiu, am I right? Zi asked expectantly. She was also practicing the animal play, but her movements were still bumpy. She couldn't even be said to be smooth. One could imagine how depressed she was. Little did she know that she had grown up in the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea and rarely left the island. She had never seen many of the animals in the animal moves, and she didn't even have any impression of some of the common poultry. How could she master it just by relying on the pictures in the Jade Archive? Naturally, the effort was not worth the reward. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned his head and snorted, I don't know. The pleading expression on Ziyi's face froze. She said angrily, let me try again. Her figure flashed, and a series of shadows appeared in the courtyard. It was a dazzling sight. All of them rushed towards Yu Qianqiu, making it hard to tell which was real and which was fake. F***ck. You're still coming. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry and began to jump around again. Farong, who was at the side, said anxiously, Ziyi, don't hit him anymore. However, he didn't listen to her advice at all. Amano and the others looked at each other. Knowing that they were all acquaintances and wouldn't kill anyone, they didn't bother. Form displacement transposition. When Lan Feng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and smiled. This was Nongzhu's signature incantation. The allure demonic lady looked at Ziyi's familiar movement technique with suspicion. She wondered why it was so similar to the Great Illusion technique. However, there was still a difference between the two. As soon as Ziyi used the shape displacement transposition, Nongzhu subconsciously looked at the Enchantress of 100 Charms. In fact, this technique was created by him after he saw Qiu Meinyang use the Phantom Great technique in the past. However, with his extraordinary talent, his self-created transfiguration transposition was even sharper than Phantom Shadow. The biggest use of Phantom Shadow was to confuse people's eyes and ears. The shape displacement transposition created by Nongzhu could not only confuse people's eyes and ears, but it was also good at speed. It was also supported by attack. The fast and elusive way of attack was hard to guard against. It was quite powerful. The higher one's cultivation, the more effective it was. However, what surprised when Lan Feng and the others was that Yu Qianqiu, who had been a little flustered in the beginning, now seemed a little elegant when he moved and dodged, giving off a transcendent feeling of walking on water. They were immediately shocked when they observed carefully. They saw that Yu Qianqiu actually closed his eyes with a faint smile on his face. No matter how many phantoms she created, he was free to move freely. The muscles on Nongzhu's face twitched. It was the first time in his life that someone could deal with his shape displacement transposition with his eyes closed. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had no choice. The phantoms that Ziyi created all over the courtyard always conflicted with his vision and intuition. He clearly felt that the opponent was attacking him from behind, but he also saw someone was attacking in front of him. The feeling of being in a dilemma was too painful, and he was almost in danger again and again. Should he see it with his own eyes or follow his intuition? After a period of embarrassment, he firmly believed in the animal tricks taught by Bai Changchun. In order not to let his vision interfere with his judgment, he simply closed his eyes. In an instant, the whole world was far away from him. The function of shape displacement transposition to confuse people's eyes and ears had no effect on him. He abandoned vision and hearing and only followed his intuition. In an instant he entered a very strange state. He felt like an eagle soaring in the wind. After spotting his prey, he could immediately judge the prey's escape route. With a preemptive dive, he could accurately make the prey fall into his claws. He felt like a fish in the water. No matter how fast the hunter's attack was, as long as there was a little fluctuation in the water, he could quickly catch it, quickly avoid the attack and escape. The more confident he was, the calmer he was. His movements were more elegant and free, like a rabbit rising and a cuckoo falling naturally. It had to be said that the cultivation of the tribulation stage provided him with a lot of convenience, giving him many abilities that ordinary people could not avoid. The more Zi fought, the more impatient she became. She increased her speed to the extreme, but she always felt that she was just a little bit away from her opponent. She was on the verge of breaking down. In the eyes of the audience, it seemed that Zi deliberately let Yu Qianqiu go. She always attacked after Yu Qianqiu dodged and she always missed by a little bit. The two of them seemed to be playing around. In fact, this was already the limit of Yu Qianqiu's dodging. If he encountered an expert in the soul formation stage with the attack speed of the soul formation stage, it would be difficult for him to dodge the opponent's attack, even if he could predict the opponent's attack first. After all, the difference in cultivation was too great. In terms of speed, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. It was difficult to make up for this with techniques. However, for those below the soul formation stage, Zi at the end of the tribulation stage was an example. When Lan Feng and the other two were shocked. This guy actually dodged using his intuition from the beginning to the end. This was too exaggerated. Maybe it was nothing now, but when his cultivation reached the soul formation stage, it would be incredible. It should be known that most of the time, soul formation stage cultivators fought with their strength. The probability of them fighting in close combat was very high. Once they fought face to face, they could predict the opponent's attack first and support it with attacks. It was a very scary thing. Dodging is so boring. I'm not fighting anymore, Zi shouted impatiently. The shadow surrounding everyone gradually disappeared. Zi looked angrily at Yu Qianqiu, who also stopped. Why are you not fighting anymore? Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and waved excitedly. Come, let's play for a while more. He was addicted to playing. This feeling was too wonderful. It was a little uncomfortable to stop playing when he was having fun. Zi stared at him and blinked her big eyes. She put away the rod in her hand and ran over with a smile. How do you practice? Teach me again. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, his face immediately darkened. He lost all interest. When he was on Obedient Island, it was not like he did not teach her. It was torture. She was asked to imitate the form of a chicken. She looked at the picture in the Jade Archive, spread her arms and flew like a bird. Yu Qianqiu was so shocked that he took a few steps back. He was speechless. In the end, he asked her to change to something else. In the end, Yu Qianqiu wanted to slap himself. It was his fault for asking for it. This woman was an idiot in some aspects. He was fooled by an idiot. What else could he do but ask for a slap? Hence, he cursed angrily and quickly ran away. If I teach you again, I'll change my surname to Chou. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Nongzhu, who was staring at him. He coughed and said, I don't have time now. We'll talk about it later. He stretched out his hand and said, Give me back my sword. Since you gave it to me, it's mine. I'm not giving it back. Zi rejected him decisively. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth but decided not to say anything. It was his bad luck to run into this father and daughter pair. He couldn't get his sword back. He turned around and walked towards the temptress. He asked with a smile, Why are you here? I'm here to broaden my horizons. I heard that you were here, so I came to look for you. With so many people around, the temptress couldn't say much. She could only say it this way. She giggled and said, I'm not familiar with this place. I'll follow you from now on. Yu Qianqiu smiled knowingly. The two of them started asking each other some irrelevant questions. Yanyu, who was beside the temptress, looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was looking straight ahead. Suddenly her nose twitched. She smelled an unforgettable body odor. His eyes abruptly widened as he sized up Yu Qianqiu's body. Then he looked at Tianye's group of four. His complexion turned deathly pale as he stared at Yu Qianqiu. Others might not be able to tell, but how could she not recognize the body odor of the first man she had a skin-to-skin contact with? It was exactly the same as Yu Qianqiu in front of her. This ability to distinguish had nothing to do with one's cultivation. No matter how high one's cultivation was, one might not be able to tell. As long as she really cared about him, it would be hard for her to mistake him. This was a gift given to women. Perhaps she would forget it after a long time. However, she hadn't been separated from him for long. She hugged the pillow in the room and sniffed it. There was still his body odor. In addition, the two of them were similar. Tianyi and the other 3 people who followed Nyoyud were also present. Moreover, she knew that Nyoyud had changed his appearance. The Nyoyud she saw was not his original face. With so many coincidences, it was hard for her to mistake him. She guessed who Yu Qianqiu was in an instant. However, Yu Qianqiu did not even look at her. That kind of indifference at such a close distance made her feel like her heart was being torn apart. The temptress inadvertently noticed Yan Yu's reaction. She saw her body tremble slightly and her face pale as she stared at Yu Qianqiu. She could not help but be stunned. Yan Yu, what's wrong? Yu Qianqiu looked at her. His expression froze. He thought to himself, oh no. Yan Yu looked miserable, but she forced a smile and shook her head. It's nothing. I remembered that I have something to do in the building. I'll go back first. She bowed to Wen Lanfeng and the others. Then she quickly left. Everyone present could see that something was wrong. Nongzhu, who knew that Nyoyud was Yu Qianqiu, snorted coldly at Yu Qianqiu. After Lu Yanqing watched Yan Yu leave, she also turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. She sighed slightly behind the green veil. Chapter 632. The atmosphere suddenly became a little heavy. Although Wen Lanfeng did not know what happened, she knew that no one wanted to say anything. So she called the manager of the shop and arranged the rooms for everyone. Hibiscus naturally lived with Yu Qianqiu. After all, their identities had been made public, so there was nothing to hide. After returning to the room, Yu Qianqiu still looked a little strange. Hibiscus grabbed his arm and asked weakly, "What's wrong with you? Are you unhappy that I came here without telling you? Then I'll ask Senior Nongzhu to take me back." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He turned to look at her and suddenly smiled. He said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not unhappy. I'm just thinking that the cornucopia is very lively. If I take Hibiscus out for a walk, I don't know if Hibiscus will be happy." "I'll be happy." Hibiscus suddenly became energetic. She held Yu Qianqiu's arm and complained, "When Ziyi and I came here, Senior Nongzhu told us not to run around. We saw that it was very lively down there from the God of Wealth Peak. I've wanted to see it for a long time. Will you take me there now?" Although she spoke in a questioning tone, her face was filled with hope. Yu Qianqiu did not have the heart to refuse her. He immediately took her hand and said with a smile, "Let's go. I'll take you there right now." Furong's face was full of joy as she followed him out. Just as the two of them walked into the courtyard, they heard someone shouting from upstairs, "Where are you going?" The two of them raised their heads and saw Ziyi poking her head out of the window. Hibiscus smiled brightly and said, "Let's go outside and have a look." Ziyi let out a scream and jumped down from the window without saying anything. She grabbed Hibiscus's arm and complained, "Hibiscus, why didn't you call me when you went out to play?" Then she turned to stare at Yu Qianqiu and said, "I'll go too." Yu Qianqiu just wanted to refuse and ask her to go back, but he saw Hibiscus's eyes showed that she was expecting him to agree. Yu Qianqiu immediately lost his temper and did not say anything to show that he agreed. Ziyi cheered, then pulled Hibiscus along and walked out. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt his scalp tingle. A woman shopping alone was not something an ordinary man could handle. Two women shopping together, it was impossible not to be mentally prepared. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath, patted his chest and followed behind them. Nongzhu looked down from the window upstairs and shook her head speechlessly. Beside her, Wen Lanfeng asked thoughtfully, "Nongzhu, what's going on with the marriage in purple?" He would never admit to this even if he was beaten to death. Nongzhu shook her head and said, "That boy is talking nonsense. There's no such thing." As soon as Yu Qianqiu came out of the one family's merchant shop, he immediately attracted many people's attention. Yu Qianqiu glanced around coldly, but the two women didn't care so much. They looked around excitedly, their eyes sparkling. Starting from the shop next to the one family's merchant shop, they did not let go of anything. They excitedly ran in hand. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He could only follow them in, and he had to maintain a gentleman's demeanor while watching them pick things. After a while, the two women piled up a lot of colorful things on the counter. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the side of the counter, trying to distinguish what the two were selling. Suddenly he heard Ziyi banging the counter and saying, "It's almost done." "How much?" The shopkeeper pulled out an abacus and after some calculations he smiled and said, "Since the two of you have sold a lot, I'll give you a discount. I won't count the small change, just pay 1,800,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Is that okay?" Yu Qianqiu fiddled with the things on the counter and frowned. "What are these things? Are they worth 1.8 million upper-grade spirit stones?" When Furong heard the price, she was shocked. She had never spent so many spirit stones before, and she had never even seen it before. Ever since she left Fushin Island with Yu Qianqiu, she had bought some things wantonly in Deyang City, but they were all in gold and silver. When she suddenly heard 1.8 million upper-grade spirit stones, she immediately pulled Zi and said, "It's too expensive. Let's not buy it." "He has money." Zi pointed at Yu Qianqiu. Then she took Furong's storage bag and put all the things in front of her into it. Then she took her own pile. She pulled Furong and left. Yu Qianqiu paid the bill speechlessly, and the shopkeeper sent them out with a smile. When he reached the end of the street, he realized that the two women were nowhere to be seen. He tried to go to the shop next door, and he found that the two women were indeed picking things inside. He smiled and walked in with a toothache. The prosperity of cornucopia was extremely extravagant. There were all kinds of dazzling items for you to choose from. Of course, the prerequisite was that you had money. For Yu Qianqiu there was no need to buy many things. However, as long as the two women liked and looked beautiful, they would buy them all regardless of whether they were useful or not. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu did not lack money at all. However, he still felt the pinch from spending money. It was not that he felt the pinch from spending money, but some things were useless to him. It was a complete waste of spirit stones. He gritted his teeth for half a day and swept through the entire cornucopia. Every shop was the happiest when they met such customers. When the two women felt embarrassed about spending money, they bought more than 10 storage bags. Only then did the three of them return to Wen Clan's shop. When the two women returned, they immediately went into the room to check their spoils of war. Yu Qianqiu calmly asked Mo Xiaojun to go out with him. As soon as they reached the yard, a head poked out of the window on the top floor and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, come up for a moment." It was Nongzhu. Yu Qianqiu asked Mo Xiaojun to wait for a moment and directly jumped in through the window. Seeing that Wen Lanfeng and the other two were there, he asked Nongzhu after saluting, "What's the matter?" Nongzhu put her hands behind her back and said expressionlessly, "You and Yo Yid are old acquaintances. Help me contact him. I have something to ask him." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He did not know what Nongzhu was doing. He asked suspiciously, "Why are you looking for him?" Nongzhu pointed to Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said, "Well, they also want a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. They're all old friends. I must help them." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Since they are old friends, don't hurt them. But now is not the time to tell them the secret of limit-breaking pills. He pondered for a moment and said, "This is not a big problem. After a period of time, I will personally send it to you two seniors. I still have something to do now." When Lanfeng smiled and waved his hand. "Since it is not a big problem, it doesn't matter if it is a little late. If you have something to do, go ahead." Lu Yanqing did not say anything and stood quietly on the side. Unexpectedly, Nongzhu snorted coldly and said, "Come on, what can you do? It is nothing more than stealing chickens and dogs. Solve this matter first." "I am stealing chickens and dogs?" When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he became furious. He raised his neck and roared, "Your disciple Zi spent more than 800 million high-grade spirit stones in half a day. I'm busy trying to earn back the money I spent. Don't you think I'm busy? If you give me 800 million upper-level spiritual stones now, I will immediately solve the matter you mentioned." 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. The room immediately quieted down. They were all shocked by such a large number. Nongzhu then asked weakly, "Zi spent so much money in half a day? Is it possible?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "I also hope it is impossible, but your disciple can't wait to put the whole cornucopia into her storage bag. 800 million is too little. If you don't believe me, you can go and have a look now. I will leave first." Then he directly ran out of the window. The three people looked at each other. After a long time, Nongzhu turned around and said, "I will go down to see what Zi has done. She can spend 800 million. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and followed. They also wanted to see it. When the three people came to Zi's room, they saw all kinds of things in the room. Zi and Hibiscus were chattering and laughing in the pile of things, like two thieves dividing the spoils. Seeing the three people coming, the two women casually threw away the things in their hands and saluted. The three people were completely speechless when they saw the messy things in the room. There was a big clean and transparent bottle at Nongju's feet. She picked it up and looked at it. With the experience of the three people, they knew what the bottle was at a glance. It was something used to pretend to be a dead body and extract the corpse poison. It was used by the more obscure alchemists to refine pills. Nongju held the bottle and asked Z, "You bought this?" Z nodded. Nongju asked again, "Why did you buy this?" Z said bluntly, "It looks good." Nongju coughed and asked, "How much did you spend this time?" Z thought for a moment and looked at Hibiscus. "The money we spent together should be less than 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones. 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones? Nongju was shocked. She looked at the things in the room and said in disbelief, "These things are worth 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones?" Also, Z moved away and pointed at the dozens of storage bags on the table behind her. "The room is a little small. There are not enough things in one storage bag. I haven't taken out the other things." Nongju and the other two people were speechless when they looked at the dozens of bulging storage bags. Now they really believed that they had spent so much money. Z looked at the three people who were silent and asked curiously, "Master, what do you want from me?" "Nothing, you can continue." Nongju waved her hand and glanced at the various things in the room. She turned around and left with cold sweat on her forehead. When the three people left, the two women continued to talk about the spoils of war. When the three people returned to the top floor, Lu Yen, who had been silent, sighed and said, "It seems that Yu Qianqiu said that Z spent 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. He didn't count Hibiscus in it. 800 million upper-level spiritual stones spent in half a day. Oh my god. She went shopping and spent 100 years of our Wen family's savings." When Lan Feng patted Nongju's shoulder and said, "If Z wants to find someone, she must find a very rich family. Our Wen family's financial resources are definitely not enough. I think only Yin Baikong's financial resources are worthy of her. But I think Yin Baikong will also retreat when he sees her. Don't make sarcastic remarks here. Z only did it once in a while." Nongju rolled her eyes and snorted, "That kid is rich. Spending some of his money is giving him face." When Lan Feng laughed and said, "But I see that Yu Qianqiu's face is dark. It seems that he is very unwilling to give face." Chapter 633. There was a restaurant diagonally opposite the Wen family's shop. Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing sat opposite each other at a table near the window on the second floor. They seemed to have no interest in the dishes on the table. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were always paying attention to the entrance of the Wen family's shop, while Man Hu was paying attention to Yan Zhuixing's expression. Ever since Yan Zhuixing knew that Yu Qianqiu had brought the two women to Cornucopia to buy things wantonly, Yan Zhuixing ran out regardless of his advice and followed Yu Qianqiu around Cornucopia for a long time. After following Yu Qianqiu into the Wen family's shop, the two came to this restaurant. "There are a lot of people who have bad intentions towards you. It's not rational for you to run out like this." Man Hu transmitted his voice. The two sat here and had been communicating by voice transmission. The occasional glances from the surroundings were very suspicious. Yan Zhuixing narrowed his eyes and said, "There are also a lot of people who have bad intentions towards Yu Qianqiu. He is also running around everywhere. If he is not afraid, why should I be afraid?" It's not the same. Wen Lanfeng is more deterrent than master. With Wen Lanfeng's support, no one dares to touch him openly. Man Hu said, "It's hard to say if he goes out. It's safe in Cornucopia, don't worry too much." Yan Zhuixing smiled and avoided the topic. Yu Qianqiu is really rich. He had spent a lot of money on the two women on this trip. It seems that he values those two women very much. This guy is ruthless and shameless. He doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. I didn't expect him to have such a tender side. Could it be that his weakness is his women? I can see that you are very concerned about Yu Qianqiu. It's not a normal kind of concern. Man Hu said. Yan Zhuixing turned his head and looked at him. There was a heart-palpitating indifference in his eyes. Then he returned to calmness and said with a smile, "He and I are old enemies. Thanks to him, my family can't reunite until now. What's more, second senior brother's enmity is also here." After seeing the change in his eyes, Man Hu's heart trembled slightly. When Yan Zhuixing first cultivated the demonic book, he found it difficult to control his emotions and often had this kind of eyes. Later on, as he cultivated for a long time, he was able to control it. However, whenever this expression appeared in his eyes, it meant that he was very unhappy. Man Hu didn't say anything else. He felt that Yan Zhuixing's desire for Yu Qianqiu wasn't as simple as revenge. Ever since Yan Zhuixing frequently inquired about Yu Qianqiu's news, The world's #1 expert below the soul formation stage has appeared. Let's go and see what else he wants to do. Yan Zhuixing stood up and left the table. Man who turned his head around and saw Yu Qianqiu looking around for a while before leaving Wen Clan's shop with another person. Mo Xiaojun followed behind Yu Qianqiu. He didn't know what he was going to do, but since Niu Yi told them to listen to him, they didn't dare to have any objections. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu's background wasn't simple either, so it wasn't too bad for them. What they saw in the Wen family shop shocked the four of them. Obviously, their relationship with Wen Lanfeng and the others wasn't ordinary. Yu Qianqiu didn't stop all the way. He wasn't interested in the dazzling array of goods on the street at all. After accompanying Furong and Ziyi for half a day, he spent more than 1 billion yuan. Now he didn't even want to look at the shops on the street. One look would bring back painful memories. It was really painful, so he might as well not see it and not be annoyed. In fact, money was a small matter. It wasn't like it was robbed by others. What else could he say when his woman spent it? Although Ziyi wasn't his woman, they were all on the same side. After spending it, he could earn it back. If he couldn't earn it back, it was because he was useless. He still had this bit of magnanimity. However, what really annoyed him was Yan Yu. Yan Yu's miserable appearance when she left had been lingering in his mind. They walked to a fork in the street and turned straight out. The two of them came to the periphery of cornucopia. There were no shops in the area, only grids made of lime powder. Each grid was about 2 square meters and there was a stall in each of them. Looking around, it seemed to be even more lively than the central area of cornucopia. There were people lingering in various stalls everywhere. There were probably many people who wanted to find treasures here. Sir, are you also here to find treasures? Mo Xiaojun followed behind him and asked. I don't have that kind of taste. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, I'm here to set up a stall. I have to earn back the money I spent today. Mo Xiaojun was stunned. The #1 expert below the demigod stage actually wanted to set up a stall. Wasn't that too degrading? He looked behind him and kindly reminded, Sir, there are many eyes behind you. They seem to be following you. Pretend I didn't see them. Let them follow me. What can they do to me? I still have to rely on them to advertise later. I guarantee my business will be booming. Yu Qianqiu stopped and looked into the distance. He rubbed his chin and said, Why are there no more stalls? Mo Xiaojun heard him and looked around. Coincidentally, he saw an empty space not far to the left. He pointed and said, Sir, there's one there. I'll go rent it for you. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it and waved his hand. Stop. It's too expensive here. The rent for a day is 10 high-grade spirit stones. Come, let's go to the edge. The rent there is only 1 high-grade spirit stone a day. There were 2 people who were pretending to follow them. They almost fainted when they heard that. They couldn't help but complain to Yu Qianqiu. They thought, we followed you around the treasure bowl today. You're so extravagant. The spirit stones you throw out can crush a cultivator to death. Now, even 10 high-grade spirit stones are expensive? Were you trying to fool? Did he notice us? It's okay. I still have some spirit stones. I'll rent the stall for you. Mo Xiaojun said kindly. Niu Yi gave the 4 of them a lot of money. No need. I have money. But I can't spend it recklessly. Yu Qianqiu sighed. The women in my family are already extravagant. If I spend more, I'll be a prodigal. I have no choice. I can only save it and let her squander it. I can't let her suffer even if I have to suffer. Besides, our goods are good. We don't have to worry about not being able to sell them. It doesn't matter if the stall is a little bad. Mo Xiaojun quickly shut up. This master was a man with his own ideas. He didn't need him to make decisions for him. The 2 of them walked to the edge of the treasure bowl and strolled around. In the end, they found that the expensive areas were still empty. But the stalls here were all occupied. It seemed that the majority of the poor were still poor. There were many people who wanted to save money. Actually, Yu Qianqiu's position was quite conspicuous. Whether it was a buyer or a seller, they were all quietly sizing him up. After all, he was the famous Yu Qianqiu. Someone didn't understand and quietly asked the person next to him who he was. The person next to him turned around and made a butcher's gesture at him. He said softly, Butcher? The latter opened his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else. He used his eyes to observe carefully. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked around. Was he looking for someone to rent with? Or was he looking for someone he didn't like to chase away? Senior, do you want to buy something? Someone suddenly spoke behind him. Although he didn't know if he was called, he still looked back and saw a familiar person nodding and bowing to him. Yu Qianqiu turned around and squinted his eyes to stare at him. This person. He was familiar, but he wasn't familiar either. He was the itinerant cultivator called Yi Qing that he met outside the plum garden of Ghost Manor. They had met a long time ago when they were on Supporting Immortals Island. Last time he intentionally avoided him because he was Niu Yud. This time he took the initiative to greet him because he was Yu Qianqiu now. Interesting. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled at him. I remember seeing you before. He didn't expose him and started to size up the things he was selling. Yi Qing bit his lips excitedly. His eyes actually turned slightly red. Senior Yu actually still remembers me. We only met once on Supporting Immortals Island. To Yu Qianqiu there was nothing worth looking at in the stall. On a piece of gray cloth, there were more than 10 stones of different colors. Some were black and some were mixed with shiny things. After looking at it for a while he still couldn't understand what it was. He guessed that it was some kind of ore. The highest price was only 9 superior grade spirit stones. He didn't know where this person dug it out and used it to cheat money. Yu Qianqiu bared his teeth and said, "What's your name?" "Senior Yu, my name is Yi Qing," Yi Qing said respectfully. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "Can I discuss something with you?" Yi Qing was stunned and immediately asked, "Please speak." "How about I rent this stall with you?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Yi Qing immediately let out an "ah," and thought that he had heard wrongly. After he reacted, he nodded and said, "Senior can say whatever you want. Then I won't stand on ceremony." Yu Qianqiu stretched his arm and first collected all the small wooden signs with the price tags on the stall. Then he stacked the pile of broken stones to one side. After emptying half of the space, he took out pots of fresh flowers from his storage bag. There were a total of 10 pots. The flowers were orchids. The strange thing was that the thin and long leaves were tender and beautiful blood red. There was also a faint smell of blood. There were 7 pure white flowers on top of them. The blood-red stamens clustered around the white petals. The whole thing gave off a pale feeling of blood. These 10 pots of flowers gave off an evil feeling. Then he took out a wooden board and wrote a bunch of words on the board with a fiery red glow on his finger. The people at the side could smell the burning wood. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the ground with a kacha sound. He looked at Yi Qing and then at the pile of broken stones. Then he took out another wooden board and wrote a bunch of words on it. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the pile of broken stones as well. After that, Yu Qianqiu clapped his hands and pulled out 2 chairs from his storage bag. He placed them behind the stall and sat down with his legs crossed. He raised his hand and gestured for Yi Qing to sit as well. Yi Qing did not dare to disobey. He nervously wiped his butt and sat down. The latter was nervous and excited. He did not expect to be on equal footing with Senior Yu. Mo Xiaojun looked at the words on the 2 boards and was speechless. He took a few steps and stood behind the 2 chairs. Yi Qing wanted to give up his seat but was stopped by Mo Xiaojun. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu and gestured for him to listen to him. Yu Qianqiu was setting up a stall on the street? There was an uproar. The idle crowd walked over quickly to see what he was selling. Chapter 634. In the blink of an eye, the stall was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone tiptoed to squeeze in. The other stalls on the side suffered, and they were trampled by pairs of feet. However, they were humble, so they didn't dare to say anything. They couldn't continue, so they had to temporarily close their stalls and watch the bustle. When someone saw the 10 pots of orchids, his eyes immediately lit up. He obviously recognized them. However, not many people recognized it, so they all looked at the wooden sign, only to see that it was written, 7-star blood orchid, sold in large quantities, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant, honest to the old and young, no bargaining. It's 7-star blood orchid. Sold in large quantities? So many. Someone from Treasure Tower seems to be buying one for 20 million. Everyone looked at the sign inserted next to the stone, which read, rare or priceless, the highest bidder gets it. There were people who had seen these stones in Yi City stalls before. At that time, the highest price was only 9 top-grade spirit stones. How did it become priceless in the blink of an eye? Those who recognized these ores sighed in their hearts, but they couldn't point it out in front of Yu Qianqiu. However, there were also many people who were tempted by these stones. They could be sold together with the 7-star blood orchid, and they were priceless, so they must be good things. Don't push forward anymore. If you step on the things in the stall, don't blame me for being rude. Yu Qianqiu sat with his legs crossed and warned the crowd coldly. The people in front immediately squeezed back. What a joke, this butcher was a master who killed without batting an eye. He even dared to offend the forces of various countries. What crazy things did he not dare to do? Yi City looked at Yu Qianqiu and then looked at the onlookers. He was very excited. Senior Yu was Senior Yu. He was so majestic wherever he went. Unfortunately, Fuxian Island couldn't keep such a talent. There were many people watching, but no one bought it at present. Yu Qianqiu silently looked at those who quietly squeezed out of the crowd and left quickly. He was not worried that the things couldn't be sold. The price was so high that ordinary people couldn't afford it. Even if he couldn't sell them, it didn't matter. He didn't think that he could make much money by selling so many blood orchids. What he had now was money. This time he had obtained a total of 46 billion high-grade spirit stones from Yin Baikong, which was enough to feed the people in Utopia. Moreover, he had a pile of top-grade and divine-grade spirit stones as his trump card, so he did not have to worry about not having enough money to spend. Moreover, he could more or less earn enough pocket money to cover his expenses. He just wanted to see who was buying a lot of 7-star blood orchids. He thought that he knew the function of 7-star blood orchids better than the average person. No matter what, there was no need to buy a lot of 7-star blood orchids. There was something strange about it. In terms of who had a large number of 7-star blood orchids, there was probably no one who had more than him. The spiritual herb garden in Utopia was like growing cabbages. Therefore, he deliberately offered such a high price to test the market. If there was still someone willing to spend a lot of money to buy it, then the buyer's motive was questionable. Who was it? The news that Yu Qianqiu was sharing a house and setting up a stall soon spread in Cornucopia. When Lan Feng dismissed the person who reported the news and turned to ask the other two, setting up a stall? What does Yu Qianqiu want to do? Nongzhu also shook her head in confusion and said, this kid talks all day long and does all kinds of unimaginable things. Who knows what he wants to do? Strange, where did he get so many 7-star blood orchids to sell? Selling a lot of 7-star blood orchids? Lu Yanqing paused and said softly, Spirit Fang Valley also raised one of the 7-star blood orchids. I have been studying it and found that this kind of spiritual herb is very magical. When it is refined with different spiritual herbs, it can produce different miraculous effects. It seems that there is infinite potential to be unearthed. Unfortunately, the cultivation period is too long, and I dare not use it freely. I only pluck a leaf every once in a while to study it, mainly because I am afraid of hurting it. As he spoke, he looked at Nongzhu and said, this thing is very hard to come by. I also want to buy a few from Yu Qianqiu, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. To me it is a little too high. Nongzhu, can you help me talk to Yu Qianqiu and ask him to sell me some at a lower price? You also know that my Spirit Fang Valley is not like other places. We have almost no income and can't get so much money. Just think of it as I owe him a favor, or I can exchange some rare elixirs with him. When Lan Feng and Nongzhu looked at each other, everyone knew that alchemy was the strength of Spirit Fang Valley, but it was hardly involved in trading. Moreover, Spirit Fang Valley's medical skills were the best in the world, but they never profited from it. They had always treated people in the world for free, including those secular mortals. Therefore, compared to other forces, Spirit Fang Valley was really poor. The disciples in the sect almost didn't use spirit stones for cultivation, but took elixirs. But it was also because of this that they won the respect of the world. Cultivators who owed them a favor, if they had the opportunity to get good spirit herbs, would give them to her free of charge. Even those secular mortals knew that Spirit Fang Valley liked all kinds of herbs. So if they occasionally came across some unknown herbs in the deep mountains and wilderness, they would send them to Spirit Fang Valley without any complaints, regardless of whether they were useful or not. In this way, Spirit Fang Valley and everyone formed a relationship of mutual dependence. In addition, Spirit Fang Valley never participated in the battle of the cultivation world, so it was not a threat to everyone. Everyone was happy to live in harmony with it. After all, they might one day need to ask Spirit Fang Valley for help. Fighting and killing, it was inevitable to suffer some incurable injuries. Even the well-known old fox Yin Baikong would send a large number of spirit herbs at a fixed time every year for free. Using rare elixirs to exchange with him? Nongzhu murmured with a strange expression. She thought to herself, is there a lack of rare elixirs in that guy's hands? He can even refine those legendary heaven-defying elixirs by himself. I really don't know if the rare elixirs in your hands will catch his eye. What? Is there a problem? Lu Yanqing asked. Nongzhu shook her head and said with a wry smile, I trust you too, so I won't hide it from you. Lu Yanqing, if you exchange elixirs with him, I'm afraid he won't be interested in your elixirs. To be honest, that kid himself is a genius in alchemy. Some of the elixirs he refined can be called heaven-defying. His attainments in this aspect may not be lower than yours. What's more, this guy has a lot of unorthodox ways. He can always get some rare spirit herbs. You should be able to see it from the large number of 7-star blood orchids he set up today. He is also a master in alchemy? When Lan Feng was a little surprised. Seeing Nongzhu nodding, he could not help but say, I really didn't see it. At such a young age, his cultivation is already outstanding among his peers, and he is full of wisdom and talent. I didn't expect him to be proficient in alchemy. Given time, it will be amazing. As an experienced person, he knew that it was impossible for a person to be distracted to do too many things. There were specializations. If one was good at one thing, the others must be weaker. It was rare to see someone like him who was so good at everything. When Lan Feng had to admire Bai Changchun's vision for accepting disciples again, Lu Yanqing was stunned. Thinking of Niu Yud's ability to refine limit-breaking pill and 7 treasures pill, she knew that what Nongzhu said was true. But as for what Nongzhu said, that Yu Qianqiu had a lot of unorthodox ways, she somewhat did not believe it. It was estimated that Yu Qianqiu could get all kinds of rare spirit herbs because of Bai Changchun. It should be known that the vast demon domain was like a virgin land that had not been unveiled. How could there be a lack of all kinds of spirit herbs in it? It could be seen from the fact that Yu Qianqiu could get so many 7-star blood orchids. Yanqing, why don't I buy 10 for you? When Lan Feng said with some apprehension. He knew that the result of saying this would be rejected. It had always been like this for many years. But it involved such a large number of spirit stones. Who would have the nerve to ask Yu Qianqiu to give it for free? Robbing? That was even worse. Not to mention that Lu Yanqing would not accept it. Just the serious consequences of robbing Bai Changchun's disciple was not something that anyone could bear. Sure enough, Lu Yanqing shook her head and said, I appreciate your kindness. I'll talk to him myself. If he doesn't want to, then forget it. I won't force him. Well, let me go find that kid. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, it's just a few 7-star blood orchids. It's not as complicated as you think. If he has more, let him give some for free. Lu Yanqing, you owe him a favor. Don't mention exchanging elixirs for them. In fact, Nongzhu really didn't want to open his mouth. Some time ago he got a sword from the immortal world from Yu Qianqiu. If he said it was a betrothal gift, he could comfort himself. Later, Zi spent so much money from him. He could also comfort himself by saying that it was right. His daughter was ready to be given to him. It was nothing to spend some money from him. But then he asked him for a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. Now he had to ask Yu Qianqiu for a few 7-star blood orchids. No matter how thick-skinned Nongzhu was, he felt a little embarrassed. He asked for things from the younger generation and they were all valuable things. It was a little shameful. Taking advantage of others was not like this. He was not at the point where he could be slaughtered, right? What's more, when Yu Qianqiu left before, he said that he was going to earn back the money his daughter spent, so he set up a stall to sell blood orchids. The disciple of Bai Changchun, the world's #1 master, was forced to set up a stall to sell things. As a result, when the things were put out, he took a fancy to them and asked them for free. How could he ask for it? Originally, he was very unhappy that Yu Qianqiu and the woman in the Sleeping Spring building were together. He was also full of anger and wanted to find an opportunity to teach this kid a lesson. But he was short of a hand. If he opened his mouth, the guy who only cared about money would lose hundreds of millions in vain. How could he mention the woman in the Sleeping Spring building? It should be known that the kid was not a good person to talk to. At that time he could shut him up with one sentence. But seeing the two friends in a dilemma, he couldn't bear it, so he had to agree to this matter. But the consequences of agreeing to this matter, he was afraid that some things would have to be turned a blind eye to Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 635. It was impossible for the World Commerce Association to not know about such an uproar. On the God of Wealth Peak, Sikongju reported this matter to his master, who knew that after Yin Baikong heard this, he didn't seem to find it strange at all and only nodded to indicate that he understood. Instead, he was more interested in the process of Hu Yunqian's disturbance at Sleeping Spring Loft, especially when he heard that there was a beauty even more beautiful than Yanyu. His eyes flickered and he asked a few more questions. Sikongju went down the mountain with doubts in his heart. Could it be that his master already knew about the 7-star blood orchid? 200 million for one stalk, isn't he afraid of breaking his own teeth? This brat really dares to quote a price, but this is his style. Yin Baikong stared at the foot of the God of Wealth Peak and recalled the scene of Yu Qianqiu trying to hide and sell the 7 treasure pills. Comparing the past and the past, he realized that this fellow was indeed extraordinarily greedy. Yin Baikong gazed into the distance from the foot of the mountain and muttered to himself, to be able to take out so many 7-star blood orchids at once, it seems that this is the benefit that Niu Yud gave him. The immortal world is indeed the immortal world. The rare spirit herbs of the mortal world are probably nothing much over there, otherwise how could they sell so much? After some consideration he summoned Jing Yuan Kong and gave him 3007 treasure pills for him to arrange the sale. As for the rest, Yin Bai Kong prepared to leave it for the World Commerce Association's own use. After the next batch of goods arrived, he would consider the sale according to the situation. After repeating this a few times, he would have enough financial resources and spirit pills stored up. Once Bai Changchun entered the East Holy Land without the most terrifying hindrance, the rise of the World Commerce Association would be unstoppable. After the news of Yu Qianqiu setting up a stall spread, the border area of Cornucopia instantly became bustling with people. Yan Zhuixing and Man Who stood outside the crowd. Because they were worried that someone would secretly attack them, they didn't dare to squeeze in to take a look. On this point, Yan Zhuixing was more or less not as bold as Yu Qianqiu. That fellow could still sit in a pile of enemies with his legs crossed and shout. Who was he afraid of? Yan Zhuixing and Man Whose expressions turned serious when they heard that Yu Qianqiu had set up a stall to sell 7-star blood orchids. They felt that it was too much of a coincidence. Previously they were still discussing with Bing Qingzi where they could get a large number of blood orchids. Now Yu Qianqiu began to sell them in large quantities. It couldn't be more coincidental. However, the price was really ridiculously high, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant. Man Who looked at the people coming and going and said with some worry, if we wait like this, will someone buy it? It might be possible if the price was low, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. Unless there is an urgent need, who would spend such a huge amount of money? Wasn't he selling them in bulk? Even if someone wants to buy it, it's impossible for them to buy it all, Yan Zhuixing denied. That's true. Man Who nodded his head, then slightly sighed and said, although the price is outrageous, but in order for you to master the devil arts as soon as possible and have the ability to protect yourself, I'm afraid that Master will save the money to purchase the restriction-breaking Dan and 7 treasure Dan. Even if it is more expensive he will still buy some. Yan Zhuixing was silent and thought, if my demonic technique can reach the great accomplishment stage early, this little money is nothing. But he wouldn't directly say this to Man Who. But this is also good. At least Master doesn't have to violate the oath to go to the Wu clan in the Chinese cultivation world to find the blood orchids, Man Who said with emotion. Yan Zhuixing heard this and suddenly narrowed his eyes. In his mind he recalled the scenes of meeting Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue several times in the Wu clan. He said in a deep voice, I understand, so it is him. What? Man Who asked with some doubts. Yan Zhuixing slowly explained, I know who the Wu clan's 7-star blood orchids came from. I should have thought of it earlier, otherwise it wouldn't be so coincidental. Back when Yu Qianqiu was in the Wu clan happened to be auctioning the 7-star blood orchids. Later I found it strange. Why did the Wu clan auction such rare spiritual herbs one after another? I haven't even heard of it in other places. Today this guy just happened to have a bunch of 7-star blood orchids for sale. Connecting the two matters together, it is very clear. In fact he had only guessed half of it. When the Wu clan first auctioned the 7-star blood orchids, Yu Qianqiu was just a buyer. However, after he brought the blood orchid back to Utopia, it bred a lot, which was why it was auctioned later on. So that's how it is. Man Who nodded and said, in that case this guy must know where there is a large number of blood orchids. It would be good if we can get some information from him. After all, the more blood orchids you have, the better. Spending money to buy them isn't a solution. This guy's price is too high, and if we buy too much our ice palace won't be able to afford it. Find a chance to meet him alone. I have a way to get it out of him, Yan Zhuixing said confidently. Man Whose eyes lit up. Just as he was about to say something, he heard someone laugh and say, so Brother Man and Brother Yan are here too. The two of them turned around and saw it was none other than Hu Yuntian. Looking at his happy face, it seemed that the embarrassing incident at the sleeping spring loft didn't affect him anymore. Hu Yuntian had 4 followers behind him. After the 3 of them greeted each other, Hu Yuntian looked at the crowded place and said with a smile, are the 2 of you here to watch the show? Why don't you go in and take a look? Squeezing with them is beneath my dignity. Man Who looked at the crowd in disdain and found a good excuse. Ah, that's easy. Hu Yuntian waved at the 4 people behind him, and they immediately opened up a path in front of them. They kept shouting, make way, make way. When the people who were being chased saw that they were from the Cloud Palace, they all made way. Please. Hu Yuntian waved at the 2 of them. The 2 of them looked at each other and didn't stand on ceremony. They followed him in. Yu Qianqiu's stall was set up for half a day. There were many people looking at it but no one was interested in it. The 7-star blood orchid wasn't sold, but Yi Cheng's pile of broken stones were sold at a high price. They were sold for more than 50,000 high-grade spirit stones. Yi Cheng naturally knew that it was because of Yu Qianqiu, so he wanted to give him the spirit stones. But how could Yu Qianqiu take advantage of this, so he firmly refused. After being stared at for so long, Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. Just as he was comforting himself to be patient, he suddenly heard someone shouting to open up a path. Turning his head, he saw a few people walking over in an imposing manner. He didn't know Hu Yuntian, so he was stunned when he saw Man Hu and Yan Juexing. When Man Hu saw him, he couldn't help but think of his second brother's death. His expression didn't look good even if he wanted to. Instead, Yan Juexing cupped his hands and smiled. "Brother Yu, I didn't expect to see you here again." Hu Yuntian looked at both sides and asked despite knowing the answer, "So the two of you know each other?" Who didn't know that Yu Qianqiu and Yan Juexing were old enemies in China's cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu stood up and also cupped his hands and smiled. "I was wondering why my eyelids kept twitching today. So it's because an old friend is here. Brother Yin, I really missed you after we parted in China." His words didn't match and no one knew if he was flattering or mocking. When he stood up, Yi Cheng couldn't sit still and quickly stood up as well. Yan Juexing didn't mind. He had already experienced this guy's eloquence, and he had never taken advantage of him. Sparring with him was just looking for excitement. "This is East Country's Cloud Palace's Hu Yuntian, third young master Hu." Yan Juexing introduced with deep meaning. He emphasized the name Hu Yuntian very clearly. He came to a conclusion today and he wanted to verify if women were Yu Qianqiu's weakness. Wasn't there a rumor in China's cultivation world that the Temptress of 100 Charms was Yu Qianqiu's mistress? When Yu Qianqiu heard that this person was Hu Yuntian, his expression changed slightly. He glanced over coldly. "You're that Hu Yuntian who snatched people from Sleeping Spring Loft?" Yan Juexing knew it was as he expected, and he smiled without saying a word. Hu Yuntian was stunned and he felt that something was wrong. Judging from Yan Juexing's tone, he didn't seem to like him, and he didn't know when he had offended Yan Juexing. He paused for a moment and smiled. "It was a moment of recklessness and I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Yu. On the other hand, Brother Yu's reputation as the #1 expert below spirit severing stage is something that I've long heard of." As he spoke, he glanced at Yan Juexing and he realized that he had been tricked. Yu Qianqiu also glanced at Yan Juexing and then looked around. He resisted the urge to make a move on the spot. He sat down on a chair casually and said with an expressionless face, "I say I'm currently doing business and we'll talk again when I'm free. If you're not buying anything, please get out of the way. Don't hinder my business." Hu Yunqian's expression changed. He was used to being unreasonable, and this Yu Qianqiu made him lose face again and again in public. He almost couldn't hold it in anymore, but he knew that when Lan Feng was currently in the cornucopia, and he had to endure it no matter what. After all, his father wasn't as powerful as when Lan Feng, who knew that his guards would overdo their duty, and they didn't understand their boss's spirit. One of the guards, who was probably the leader, shouted, "How dare you!" Hu Yuntian wanted to stop his men from being rude, but he was too slow. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and he didn't say anything else. He flicked his sleeve and a group of green rays shot out. The guard was shocked. He didn't expect the other party to attack without saying a word. He was a disciple of the Yun Palace. Being caught in the crowd, it was difficult to dodge, and at such a close distance the only place to dodge was the sky, so he immediately dodged up. Who knew that the other party had already expected it? He had just jumped up half a person's height when a figure fell from the sky, holding a big black saber and slashed at his head. In a flash, a flying sword shot out to meet the enemy. Dang, the flying sword broke into two. The distance was too close and he couldn't dodge in front, back, left, or right. The flying sword from below came again. The guard was frightened, and he had no choice but to use his protective aura chi to protect his body. However, he seemed to have forgotten what the big black saber in Yu Qianqiu's hand was. It was a fierce thing that had once caused a reign of terror. Puff. A scream sounded, and everyone watched in horror as the big black saber cut through the protective aura chi like a watermelon, and cut the guard in half. The process was complicated, but it happened in the blink of an eye. No one thought that Yu Qianqiu would dare to make a move in the cornucopia without any warning. Hu Yuntian, Yan Juexing, and Man Hu were also stunned. They didn't expect this guy to be so crazy. It wasn't until Yu Qianqiu killed the guard that the surrounding people reacted, and with a hua sound they were afraid of being involved, so they all dodged. In such a crowded situation the scene could be imagined. It was called a person colliding with another. Chapter 636. The figures scattered, but the few of them did not move. In the blink of an eye, the group of people had completely dispersed, retreating at least tens of meters away. Man Hu, Yan Zhuixing, Hu Yuntian, the remaining 3 guards, Mo Xiaojun and Yi Qing. The 8 of them looked at the 2 halves of the corpse. The intestines were scattered all over the ground, and the blood-red liquid was still flowing. The few of them still could not believe that this was true. An early-stage crossing tribulation cultivator was killed by Yu Qianqiu just like that. Among the 8 of them, Yu Qianqiu coldly snorted. He dragged a black saber that was even bigger than a person and indifferently turned around to clean up the 10 pots of blood orchids on the stall. It seemed that his business could no longer continue. Hu Yuntian suddenly roared, "Yu Qianqiu, how dare you kill my Cloud Palace disciple?" He was originally ordered to come and pull Yu Qianqiu into the Cloud Palace. He did not expect such a thing to happen. Before he even started to pull people in, they had already become enemies. Yu Qianqiu turned around and put his saber on his shoulder. Behind him, tens of cyan flying swords rotated around. He expressionlessly stared at the corpse on the ground and said, "I have killed many people. This is not the first time I have killed a Cloud Palace disciple. Furthermore, you overestimated yourself and dared to come out and shout at me. If you are not courting death, then what are you doing? Do you think I am easy to bully?" Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu looked at each other. They both had the same thought. This guy is a complete lunatic. If you do not give a satisfactory explanation today, don't even think of leaving here alive. Wu Yuntian angrily said. The 3 guards beside him all flew out with their flying swords. They floated in front of them, waiting for an opportunity. Mo Xiaojun did not say anything and also released his flying sword. Yi Qing also followed suit. He had seen Senior Yu's style today. That was called clean and neat. He even killed a Cloud Palace disciple without hesitation. He did not expect that he would be able to fight alongside Senior Yu today. This has nothing to do with the 2 of you. Scram. Yu Qianqiu turned around and shouted at the 2. The 2 did not dare to disobey and slowly retreated. A satisfactory explanation? What a joke. It was clearly your subordinate who threatened me first, and now you want me to give you a satisfactory explanation? What if you're satisfied but I'm not? Yu Qianqiu sneered, how about this? Let's cut the crap. No one will be satisfied just by talking. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one? We'll fight to the death. Whoever dies will be unlucky. What do you think? Wow. The crowd was boiling. The atmosphere was pushed to the climax by Yu Qianqiu's words. It was 2F** King direct. Everyone was rubbing their fists. There was going to be a good show to watch. Hu Yuntian was choked by this sentence. His senior brother Chu Dingfang had died at the hands of Yu Qianqiu in Dayang Kingdom. In terms of ability he was slightly inferior to Chu Dingfang. How could he dare to accept the challenge? However, he had already spoken. If he did not accept it, he would not only lose face for himself, but also for his father, Hu Changshu. Cornucopia wasn't small, but it wasn't big either. What happened here immediately spread. Just as Hu Yuntian's expression was uncertain, someone came to help him. Mu Lianqiu arrived quickly with 10 law enforcement guard disciples and landed between Yu Qianqiu and Hu Yuntian. In just a short while, a large group of people appeared silently in the air. The people below raised their heads to take a look, and all of them immediately fell silent out of fear. Impressively, the various deity transformation stage lords had arrived. Mu Lianqiu, you came at the right time. Hu Yuntian pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said, he killed my Cloud Palace disciple in public. This is your world commerce's territory. I hope the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia will give justice to my Cloud Palace. T. Yu Qianqiu pointed the blade directly at Hu Yuntian and said, it was clearly your Cloud Palace who bullied me first, hindered me from doing legal business here and threatened me. I was forced to take action. The eyes of the masses are clear. Everyone saw this. I strongly request the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia to punish evil and punish these bullies. What a sharp-tongued junior. How dare you speak irresponsibly here? Someone suddenly spoke in the air. His voice was not loud, but every word entered everyone's ears. Everyone looked over. A gray-robed old man slowly floated into the air and stared down indifferently. Hu Yuntian was overjoyed when he saw this. It was none other than his father, one of the top 10 experts, a late-stage soul formation cultivator, Hu Changshu. He immediately led the 3 guards to salute. Yu Qianqiu was not a fool. Without thinking, he knew who it was from their actions. He was about to defend himself, But before he could speak, someone had already spoken. An indistinct voice traveled over. Hu Changsho, you're so awe-inspiring. Is it appropriate to use it on an early-stage tribulation passing junior? You didn't see what happened with your own eyes. How do you know he's speaking irresponsibly? Isn't he being a little overprotective? The soft voice was like stirring up waves, surging layer by layer and reverberating endlessly in cornucopia. On God of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong wanted to personally attend the scene, but after hearing this voice he paused and turned back to Sikongju saying, "It's not convenient for me to show up. You handle it and keep in touch with me through voice transmission." Sikongju accepted the order and left. Most of the people below didn't know who the speaker was, but from the voice they knew the speaker was not simple. Otherwise he would not speak to Hu Changsho like this. Those who knew were slightly shocked. Wen Lanfeng's words were not false. He was indeed supporting Yu Qianqiu. Suddenly, 3 people appeared in the air and stood face to face with Hu Changsho. They were Wen Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing and Nongzhu. Wen Lanfeng stood in the middle. Hu Changsho's expression changed. He cupped his hands and squeezed out a smile, saying, "Brother Wen, Sister Lu Yanqing is also here, Nongzhu." He glanced at Bing Qingzi in the air not far away. Yin Baikong did not even come. Among the 3, only Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. The other 2 looked down and saw that Yu Qianqiu was carrying a huge black saber. It was as if he was going to attack a city and fight a war. He was truly overbearing. Lu Yanqing glanced at the corpse at his feet and frowned slightly. When Yu Qianqiu saw that he had 3 backers, he immediately winked at Hu Yuntian, wondering if he should seize the opportunity to kill this guy. Hu Yuntian's face was slightly pale, knowing that he would not be able to get away with it today. Mu Lianxiu and the others who were sandwiched between the 2 looked at each other, knowing that this matter was no longer up to them to handle. At this moment, Bing Qingzi flashed to Hu Changsho's side. He knew that it would be inappropriate if he did not come out. Yin Baikong did not come. If he hid at the side and watched Hu Changsho alone, this alliance would become a big joke and he would also lose face. It's normal for there to be some friction between the younger generation. There's no need to muster a large force. Bing Qingzi first said some words to smooth things over, then turned his head and shouted, "Sikongju, how long are you going to wait? This is your World Chamber of Commerce's territory. Don't tell me you want to watch the show instead of coming out to mediate?" A figure flashed over. Sikongju awkwardly bowed to them and said, "Greetings, seniors. May I know what happened?" "Don't talk nonsense." Bing Qingzi pointed down and said, "Cornucopia's law enforcement guards are down there. You can ask them yourself. If this matter is not handled fairly and something happens, you will be responsible for the consequences." Yin Baikong did not want to offend anyone and hid. How could Bing Qingzi let him have his way? He immediately pushed the conflict over. Hu Changsho nodded knowingly. Sikongju smiled bitterly. There was no justice to speak of in this matter. He would offend whoever he made suffer. However, he had no choice. After all, the World Chamber of Commerce was the owner of this place. Hence, he braced himself and cupped his hands at them. "Seniors, please wait a moment. I will go down and take a look first." He went down in a flash and glanced at Yu Qianqiu, who was carrying a big saber. He thought to himself, "Why did you come out to set up a stall? Aren't you looking for trouble?" He then asked Mu Lianxiu in a deep voice, "What exactly is going on?" Mu Lianxiu bowed and said, "I have just arrived and have not figured out the cause of the matter." Even if he knew, he could not say it clearly. Otherwise, not only would he be embarrassed, his master would also be embarrassed. He would definitely punish him when he returned. The best outcome for this matter was to let it go unsettled. Sikongju nodded and looked at the people causing trouble on both sides. He said sternly, "How dare you cause trouble in Cornucopia? Explain the matter clearly. Otherwise, no matter who is behind you, you will be severely punished." It sounded like he was not bending the law for personal gain. When the surrounding ordinary cultivators heard this, they were in awe. The World Chamber of Commerce was indeed the World Chamber of Commerce. They were not afraid of power. However, to those soul formation experts in the air, they were well aware that it would be strange if this matter could be explained clearly. Sikongju was clearly trying to smooth things over. By saying such words, he was protecting the World Chamber of Commerce's face and also letting the matter go unsettled. Swish! The big saber in Yu Qianqiu's hand was stabbed into the ground. The green flying sword on his back flashed into his sleeve. He raised his finger and said to Hu Yuntian and the rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even Man Hu and Yen Zhuixing were counted. He then cupped his hands at Sikongju and said, "Senior Sikong, there is no need to explain this matter. There are 6 of them and only one of me. Anyone with a discerning eye can tell who is bullying who. They are clearly taking advantage of their power to bully others. Senior Sikong, you have to uphold justice for me. I was only setting up a small stall here, but their group came to cause trouble. This guy lying on the ground even threatened me, so I had no choice but to kill him. What does it have to do with us? Man Hu and Yen Juexing's expression changed. This guy was pestering endlessly and actually dragged the 2 of them into this. However, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu were both present. Both parties were allies. If they publicly said that they weren't on the same side, what would others think? There would be suspicions of being afraid of trouble. The one who would be the most embarrassed would probably be Bing Qingzi. Yu Qianshou, don't talk nonsense here. Hu Yuntian said angrily, it was clearly you who spoke rudely first. You were also the one who killed him when there was a disagreement. You still dare to frame us. I spoke rudely first? Yu Qianshou sneered, it seems like I have always been polite. Why don't you tell me what offensive words I've said? You. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. Yu Qianshou smiled contemptuously, can't say it right? Let me say it for you. I clearly said that I am currently doing business and we can slowly chat when I have time. If you are not buying anything, then please move aside and don't hinder my business. Very courteous words. Could it be that these words are also called rude words? You guys are bullying others with your power. Chapter 637. At this point, Yu Qianshou angrily pulled out the big black blade from the ground. He waved the blade twice and pointed it at Hu Yuntian's nose. Senior Sikong, the truth is in front of us. Hurry up and capture these evildoers and punish them severely. Don't let them escape. Looking at his impatient look, it was as if he wanted Sikong Ju's help to capture them. Sikong Ju couldn't help but roll his eyes. What you said is the truth. You want to capture them? In the air, a fatty dressed in blue hugged his belly as he laughed. This person was none other than Pei Fong. Actually, there were many people who wanted to laugh. Nongzhu was one of them. However, she forced herself not to laugh out loud. The corner of Wen Lanfeng's mouth curled into a smile. Hu Yuntian was so angry that he almost became muddle-headed. He immediately roared, who said we were going to run? If you're not going to run, then plead guilty obediently and save us the trouble. Yu Qianshou waved his blade at Sikong Ju and the rest. In the blink of an eye it became us. It seemed like they were going to carry out the law together. Sikong Ju could tell that Hu Yuntian cultivated under Hu Changshou's protection. Usually, everyone would give in to him. No one dared to talk back to him. He could be unreasonable, but he wasn't good at talking. In the end, he met Yu Qianshou today. It seemed like he was going to be muddle-headed from anger. If he allowed Yu Qianshou to continue, Hu Yuntian would definitely plead guilty and submit to the law. This was not the result that Yu Qianshou wanted. Sikong Ju coughed and said, Hu Yuntian, are Yu Qianshou's words true or false? He was reminding Hu Yuntian to explain himself. It was useless to keep talking to Yu Qianshou. The matter wasn't even clear. If he talked about pleading guilty, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Hu Yuntian. Yu Qianshou pointed with his blade again and quickly snatched the topic. He shouted, if you have the ability, swear to the heavens that what I just said was false. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. He really didn't dare to swear an oath, because what Yu Qianshou said before was indeed true. However, the tone he used when it happened was completely different from the tone he used when he explained it in front of everyone. Yen Juexing and Man Hu glanced at each other. This Hu Yuntian might seem smart, but if it wasn't for his father, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Idiot. Hu Changshou's face darkened and he immediately scolded, why do you care what he said? Just talk about yourself. What does it matter if you say black is white? I'm here. What are you afraid of? He just couldn't figure it out. How could a person who usually looked quite shrewd become like this after being angered so casually? After being scolded by his old man, Hu Yuntian suddenly came to his senses. The fury in his eyes gradually calmed down, and he regained his shrewd appearance. He said to Sikong Ju in a clear voice, Senior Sikong, Yu Qianshou is talking nonsense. Not a single word is true. It is a fact that he killed people in cornucopia. Everyone saw it. Please punish him severely, Senior. These two completely different reactions were because everyone could tell that he was being guided. But this was exactly what Sikong Ju hoped for. Sikong Ju tilted his head and asked, Yu Qianshou, Hu Yuntian said that everything you said was a lie. What else do you have to say? Yu Qianshou raised his head and looked at Hu Changshou in the sky, then looked at Hu Yuntian, and revealed a mocking expression of exasperation at Hu Changsho's failure to meet his expectations. He shook his head and sneered, "This person is already shameless to the point of lying with his eyes wide open. What else do I have to say? If I continue talking, it will just be a result of not acknowledging each other. It's simply a waste of saliva. Senior Sikong, why don't you be more direct?" Sikong Ju let out an "oh," and his eyes flickered as he asked, "How to be more direct?" Yu Qianqiu stared at Hu Yuntian and sneered, causing Hu Yunqian's hair to stand on end. Suddenly he saw the blade in his hand pointing at him and said, "Hu Yundan, I'll still say the same thing. There's no meaning in arguing with your glib tongue. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one, and we won't rest until one of us is dead? Whoever dies will be unlucky. How about it?" The surrounding crowd went into an uproar again. This madman's killing desire was very strong. He was indeed worthy of the title of butcher. It seemed like he really wanted to slaughter Hu Yuntian. If he didn't have the confidence to slaughter Hu Yuntian, he definitely wouldn't keep mentioning about fighting one-on-one. Although no one said it, they actually hoped that Hu Yuntian would accept the challenge. They just treated it as watching the show. In the crowd there was a pair of bright eyes. Yen Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. With the commotion caused, it was impossible for her not to have heard the news. Originally she didn't want to come, but for some reason she still came. Farong Zi and the rest were currently anxiously pacing around the One Clan's shop. They really wanted to come over and take a look, but before Nongzhu came out, he ordered them not to come out. Hu Yuntian was challenged by him again, and his expression was dark and gloomy, showing signs of going berserk. If he still didn't accept the challenge, how would he still have the face to mingle in the cultivation world? Right at this moment, Hu Changsho transmitted his voice, "Is your face more important or your life more important? Don't let your imagination run wild and push the problem to Sikongju." Hu Yuntian took a deep breath and cupped his hands towards Sikongju. "Senior Sikong, Cornucopia is the territory of the World Commerce Guild. What do you think?" Sikongju decisively rejected, "Cornucopia doesn't allow private fights. I think this matter will be investigated one day. Why don't we put it aside for now and deal with it after the matter is investigated?" What if the matter is never investigated clearly? Laughter came from the sky. Pei Fang's fat face shook as he said, "In my opinion, Yu Qianqiu's idea is not bad. Instead of dragging it on, it's better to fight to the death. Once and for all, there won't be any trouble in the future." Hu Changsho and Bing Qingzi swept a cold glance over. Pei Fang was obviously up to no good. The latter met their gaze and smiled indifferently. Anyway, no matter who died, he wouldn't lose anything. It seemed that Hu Yuntian was more likely to die. If he could take the opportunity to attack Hu Changsho, why wouldn't he do it? If Yu Qianqiu died, it would be even better if Wen Lanfeng did something else. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew that this damn fatty was up to no good by fanning the flames, but he really wanted to kill Hu Yuntian while Wen Lanfeng was here. After making up his mind, he sneered, "Hu Yuntian, since private fights aren't allowed in Cornucopia, we might as well settle this outside. If you're afraid of me, you might as well bring your 3 guards with you. If you're still afraid." Dao Feng pointed at Yan Juexing and Man Hu and said, "It doesn't matter if the 6 of you come at me together. I'll definitely keep you company until death. How about it, do you dare?" When he was still at the nascent soul stage, he dared to fight with those at the end of the crossing calamity stage. Now that he was at the crossing calamity stage, there was nothing to be afraid of. In addition, after experiencing the beauty of the animal play, he believed that killing Hu Yuntian wouldn't be a problem. The reason why he also involved Yan Juexing was because he wanted to test his opponent's depth. If possible, he might as well take advantage of Wen Lanfeng's presence to get rid of this trouble in the future. This was simply a naked provocation. 1 against 6, almost forcing Hu Yuntian into a dead end. In the air, Hu Changsho's eyes narrowed. Yu Qianqiu had gone too far and he couldn't help but get angry. Bing Qingzi also seemed to be a little tempted. Hu Yuntian and Man Hu, who were at the end of the crossing calamity stage, were not necessarily no match for Yu Qianqiu. Maybe he could take the opportunity to take revenge for his second disciple. Good. Pei Fang cheered. "No wonder you're the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. You're really brave." He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would even involve Bing Qingzi's disciple, so he was naturally excited. Lu Yanqing frowned at Yu Qianqiu's belligerent behavior. When Lanfeng seemed to be a little worried and asked Nongzhu, "Yu Qianqiu is only at the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. Won't he underestimate his opponent?" Nongzhu replied with a relaxed face, "I don't know what he wants to do. But don't worry, he won't do anything that will cause him to lose. Man who took a step forward lightly. He also wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge for his junior brother. Unexpectedly, Yan Juexing grabbed him and walked to Hu Yuntian's side, saying with a smile, "Brother Hu, Senior Pei has already said that Brother Yu is the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. How can we defeat him so easily? It's not wrong for us to admit defeat to someone who can be praised by Senior Pei." Originally he wanted to let Yu Qianqiu and Hu Yuntian do it. It had nothing to do with him, so he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu also involved him in Man Hu. If Hu Yuntian accepted the challenge, it would be inexcusable for them not to fight. Therefore they came forward to help Hu Yuntian, the fool who was outwardly smart but inwardly stupid. In fact, it was not that Yan Juexing did not want to fight. In fact, he wanted to try the effect of his demonic power against Yu Qianqiu. The demonic power had been stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words, and it was running automatically in his body. However, there were too many people watching. The power of the demonic power was extraordinary. Once he fought, he would definitely be exposed. Now that he did not have the ability to protect himself, he had to bear with it. After he got the 7-star blood orchid to improve his cultivation, everything would be easy. Although Hu Yuntian was angry at Yu Qianqiu's arrogance, he was still a little afraid of him. It should be known that the butcher in the cultivation world was famous for killing. Many experts at the final stage of the passing calamity stage had died in his hands. Now that Yan Juexing gave him a way out, he smiled calmly and said, "Brother Yan is right. Since Senior Pei praised him so much, it's not wrong for us to admit defeat." He waved his hand heroically and said, "I admit defeat and stop fighting." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He did not expect that they would admit defeat even after he had said so much. Pei Fong was stunned. He wanted to slap himself. If he had known earlier, he would not have interrupted. Hu Changshou glanced at Yu Qianqiu with a malicious gaze. Then he smiled at Wen Lanfeng and said, "Brother Wen, the heroes are here to watch the show. If this matter continues, we as guests will not give face to the host. I think it's better to follow the host's idea and temporarily put this matter aside. We will talk about it after the investigation. What do you think?" Although others thought that Yu Qianqiu had to listen to Wen Lanfeng did not think that he could be Yu Qianqiu's master. Just as he was about to use words to evade, he heard Lu Yanqing, who was beside him, say, "Isn't it better to solve it peacefully? Why must we fight and kill?" Wen Lanfeng was startled. He looked down and said, "Yu Qianqiu, since they have admitted defeat, you should also take a step back. Let's talk about this later." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Without Wen Lanfeng's support, he did not have the ability to kill Hu Changshou's son in front of him. Moreover, there was Bing Qingzi eyeing him covetously. He glanced at Nongzhu, but Nongzhu also shook her head slightly. "Damn it. Relying on others to support you is the most unstable thing. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Let's wait and see." With a calm face, Yu Qianqiu put away the big black saber. He turned around and walked to the original stall. He took out pots of 7-star blood orchids and shouted to the crowd, selling 7-star blood orchids in large quantities. 200 million per plant. Those who are willing to buy, come quickly. Chapter 638. Everyone could hear the resentment in his voice. The onlookers looked at each other. It seemed that this guy was unhappy that he didn't kill Hu Changshou's son. Hu Changshou's eyes flashed with killing intent. He turned around and disappeared in the air. Hu Yuntian happily said goodbye to Yan Juexing and Man Hu and left as well. The 3 guards went to Yu Qianqiu's stall in fear to clean up their colleague's corpse. This guy was so crazy that he didn't even put Hu Changshou in his eyes. They were really worried that he would do something out of line again. The 3 of them buried their heads in collecting the corpse. They didn't even have the courage to look up at Yu Qianqiu. Sikongju took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu and waved his hand at Mu Lianqiu and the others. He led the crowd away and continued to maintain the order of the cornucopia. Seeing that the show had come to an end and that there was nothing to see, the rulers in the air all disappeared. When Lanfeng looked at Nongzhu and smiled bitterly as if saying, "This guy won't bear a grudge against me, right?" The 2 of them disappeared together with Lu Yanqing. Bing Qingzi's pupils shrank when he saw Yu Qianqiu's blood orchid. His eyes flickered and he left. Only Yan Juexing and Man Hu didn't leave. Soon, the stalls that were divided by white lines returned to their original appearance. Regardless of whether it was the stall owners or the people lingering there, their gazes were always faintly discernible as they looked at Yu Qianqiu, filled with reverence. She had heard many rumors about Yu Qianqiu, but this was the first time she had seen him act so domineering. He killed a cultivator in the early stage of tribulation passing just because of a disagreement, and that cultivator was a disciple of the world-famous Cloud Palace. Then he brazenly challenged 6 disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace in front of everyone, including 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. In the end, the disciples of the Cloud Palace and Ice Palace admitted defeat and retreated. In addition, Pei Fong, an expert in the late stage of spirit severing. Now in everyone's mind, Yu Qianqiu was the #1 expert below the spirit severing stage. Mo Xiaojun stood quietly behind Yu Qianqiu, his attitude becoming more and more respectful. Niu Yid had appointed them as the leader, and he did not disgrace them. Yi Qing, who was standing at the side, looked at Yu Qianqiu with even more admiration. Perhaps it was because of the sense of identity, he didn't feel that Yu Qianqiu's actions were too arrogant. Instead, he thought that Yu Qianqiu had won glory for the Chinese cultivation world. In fact, there were many disciples from various sects who had snuck in from the Chinese cultivation world. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to get close to Yu Qianqiu like Yi Qing did. But it didn't affect their crazy worship of Yu Qianqiu at all. Usually they didn't dare to raise their heads here. Suddenly seeing such a figure in the cultivation world of Huaxia, they were simply overwhelmed with emotions, unable to calm down and extremely excited. Was Yu Qianqiu arrogant? Not at all. They couldn't wait for Yu Qianqiu to be 10,000 times more arrogant. It would be best if he could trample all the countries under his feet. After silently admiring him for a while, they left quietly. They wanted to report what had happened here to the Chinese cultivation world as soon as possible. Not long after, Furong Zi, Enchantress and Amano came running. After Nongzhu went back, seeing that the situation had calmed down, she allowed them to come out. Are you all right? The 3 girls asked almost at the same time. What can happen to me? When Yu Qianqiu saw Furong, the haze on his face turned into a smile and he asked, What are you doing here? Do you want to help me set up a stall? Wow. Zi stared at Shuilan in the stall and exclaimed, Selling things is such a fun thing. Why didn't you invite me? Then she crossed the stall excitedly and pushed Yu Qianqiu away. She stood on the seller's seat and looked around as if she really hoped that someone would come to buy things from her. She usually spent money to buy things, but this was the first time she tasted selling things. Furong didn't want to be outdone. She stood beside Zi happily, and the 2 of them shared the feeling of being a stall owner. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. These 2 women didn't know how hard it was to earn money, and they thought it was a fun thing. If there was a chance in the future, he would let them play every day. Let's see if they would still be in such a good mood. I also want to have a taste of living off a woman. Enchantress stood beside Yu Qianqiu with a smile, while Amano, Zi and Mo Xiaojun stood side by side, looking around vigilantly. Yi Qing glanced at Furong from time to time, trying to hide the shock in his heart. Although Hibiscus rarely showed her face on the supporting Immortal Island, she had coincidentally seen her once in the Myriad Fragrance Garden. After careful observation, he confirmed that she was the daughter of Wanfen Garden's principal elder, Furong. What he couldn't understand was why Furong and Yu Qianqiu were here together. Senior Yu, this junior still has some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. Yi Qing suddenly bowed respectfully to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded at him. Furong took a glance and realized that this person looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize him, so she didn't think too much about it. After Yi Qing got permission, he quickly walked out of the treasure basin. He wanted to think of a way to send this shocking news back to Fuxian Island. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes as he sized up Zi, Furong, and Enchantress. His lips curled into a meaningful smile. Yan Zhuixing nodded at Manhu, and the 2 of them walked towards Yu Qianqiu's stall. Because of the commotion earlier, the bustling crowd didn't dare to come over, causing the stall to be abnormally quiet. There wasn't even a single person passing by, and everyone took a detour. Just as Zi was feeling depressed, she suddenly saw 2 people walking over. She immediately said excitedly, Are you buying? How much do you want to buy? Before she could finish, she realized it was someone she knew from the saber drawing assembly. Miss Yi, long time no see. Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands. Yu Qianqiu sneered, Brother Yan, could it be that you want to wreck my stall again? When Zi heard that they wanted to wreck her stall, she immediately took out her dark purple bamboo rod and was about to make a move. Brother Yu, it's meaningless to say that. Yan Zhuixing glanced at the blood orchids on the stall and said with a smile, I saw that Brother Yu's stall was deserted, so I wanted to invite Brother Yu to visit our Ice Palace's shop when you have time. Perhaps there are people who will purchase a large amount of Brother Yu's 7-star blood orchids. Could it be him? Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Brother Yan. I will definitely pay a visit." Then I won't disturb Brother Yu's business anymore. Goodbye." Yan Zhuoxing cupped his hands and left with Man Hu. Yu Qianqiu stared at the two's departing figures with flickering eyes. Suddenly he was pulled back to reality by the noise around him. He saw many people rushing towards the center of the treasure basin. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? The World Commerce Association put up a new signboard and started selling the 7 treasure pill that can help break through the bottleneck of cultivation. Then we have to hurry and take a look. Maybe we loose cultivators will have a chance to buy it and make a huge profit. When the news about the 7 treasure pill came from the crowd, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Young Master Mo, go take a look." Yes. Young Master Mo accepted the order and left. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed into slits as he muttered to himself, "Selling the 7 treasure pill? Yin Baikong, your time of misfortune has come." Ever since he used Niu Yud's identity to sell the last batch of limit-breaking pills to Yin Baikong, he had decided to stop. It wasn't that he didn't want to make more money, but after seeing the various countries in Yin Baikong's secret game, he knew that he wouldn't be able to make a fortune for long. Even though the country's alliance was crushed by Yin Baikong once, none of them were to be trifled with. They definitely wouldn't sit by and watch the World Commerce Association continue like this. To be able to become a lord in the cultivation world, no one was a fool. This was because Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hadn't reached the point where it hurt everyone's bones. Now wasn't the time to make a move against a colossus like the World Commerce Association. Because some people were still holding a wait-and-see attitude, they were afraid of being attacked by the powerful World Commerce Association. But once Yin Baikong's methods of accumulating wealth hurt everyone's vitality, the various powers wouldn't be able to sit still and would definitely join forces. At first, Yu Qianqiu was curious as to what kind of backing Yin Baikong had to dare to do such a thing. He wasn't a fool. But after thinking about it from his own point of view, he suddenly realized that this old fox was relying on Niu Yud, an immortal from the immortal world. Yin Baikong first boldly threw out several billion, taking the risk of paying first before taking the goods. Then, for every 5,000 limit-breaking pills, he took the initiative to increase the price by 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, constantly expressing goodwill towards Niu Yud. The reason why he didn't hesitate to cooperate with Niu Yud to do business was to tie Niu Yud's interests tightly with his. Once the various powers retaliated, not only would it hurt his interests, it would also hurt Niu Yud's interests. Yu Qianqiu thought that if he really was Niu Yud, who had the strength of an immortal from the immortal world, he definitely wouldn't sit by and watch his interests be harmed. At the crucial moment, he would not hesitate to come out and intimidate everyone. After thinking about this, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he hadn't taken the initiative, Yin Baikong would have really used this opportunity to rise up and become an unshakable overlord of the cultivation world. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong's foresight. Ever since he found out that Niu Yud was an immortal from the immortal world, he immediately started to make plans. This kind of courage and foresight made others sigh in admiration. As expected, he was someone who could achieve great things. It wasn't by chance that the World Commerce Company could reach its current state. After understanding the implications, Yu Qianqiu knew that this was the end of his fortune, and it wasn't good for him to meddle any further. Thus, he decisively threw out 20,000 limit-breaking pills at once. After making a huge profit, he quickly got rid of Niu Yud's identity. Then he immediately used Yu Qianqiu's identity to send out 5,007 treasure pills that buried the World Commerce Company. He wanted to see how Yin Baikong would clean up this mess. The only thing that made Yu Qianqiu regret was that he didn't think so far ahead. He regretted getting himself involved with Niu Yud. In the future there might be some small troubles. Demon Domain Yin Wind Valley. The mountains that stretched for dozens of miles had been sealed off by thick Yin fog for countless years. Raging Yin winds carried Yin phosphorus ghost flames everywhere. Although the environment was harsh, it was a rare cultivation treasure land with abundant Yin chi for the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators who lived here. Just as the ghost cultivators were cultivating as usual, a gust of Yin chi that was as thick as ink suddenly erupted violently from the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The strong airflow whistled out crazily, and even the nearby rocks that weighed hundreds of kilograms were blown away. In an instant, the dark clouds that covered the sky above the Yin Wind Valley became restless, causing the hundreds of thousands of ghost cultivators to look over. An indescribable feeling of terror spread in the hearts of the ghost cultivators. Just when the Nether Cave had just undergone an unusual change, inside the Ghost King Palace, Yu led the group of ghost generals and arrived one after another. Braving the strong wind, they landed a few hundred meters away from the Nether Cave. All of them were bewildered. Qi that was as thick as ink continuously whistled out of the cave along with the strong wind. Chapter 639. Such a thick energy for ghost cultivators was something that they could not wish for. However, such an abnormal change caused the hearts of all the ghost cultivators to be filled with terror. It was a type of terror towards the unknown. Yu pursed her lips, her hair blowing in the strong wind. The group of ghost generals behind her also had bewildered gazes, not knowing what was going to happen. Shuntian Island by Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in a large room, suddenly opened his eyes and suddenly disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was already standing at the edge of the 1,000-mile lake, facing the direction of the Wind Valley, holding a bright moon in one hand. More accurately, it was a mirror that glowed with a bright white light. All of a sudden, the white light retracted back into the mirror. On the surface of the ancient and smooth mirror that was lined with vine patterns, the scene in front of the 9 Nether caves suddenly appeared. Even the bewildered Yu and the others appeared in the mirror. The mirror floated in front of him. Bai Changchun frowned, his eyes filled with puzzlement. He clearly did not know what was going on. Inside the 9 Netherworld cave, after crossing the Netherworld Flame Sea, the majestic underworld gate let out a deep and heart-palpitating sound. The gap of the gate gradually became larger, and the Netherworld Flame Sea that had been burning for who knows how many years began to violently shake. The chaotic airflow caused the various skeletal statues on the huge underworld iron mountain to let out all kinds of cries. Men and women, old and young, large and small, the skeletal statues seemed to come to life, crying to someone about the misfortune of their previous life. All kinds of cries gathered in the underground space, echoing endlessly, creating a scene of chaos. If Yu Qianqiu was here, he would definitely be shocked. The underworld gate that had been closed for who knows how many years was actually slowly opening. When the majestic, thick and dark underworld gate opened to a meter wide, it stopped moving. Behind the gate, there was a black light constantly rotating. Suddenly 2 white lights flashed. With 2 shio sounds, the 2 white lights turned into 2 figures that stopped in front of the underworld gate. 2 white-robed men that looked exactly the same appeared. Their faces were also snow-white and pale, so pale that it was a bit abnormal, as if they were twin brothers. The 2 of them coldly looked around. After a long time, one of them slowly said, "Everything is normal." Another person nodded and said, "Big brother, why did the Underworld Emperor ask us to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds?" The former shook his head and said, "It was Lady Blackpool's idea." Hearing this, the latter was taken aback and sighed, "Big brother, have you noticed that because the Underworld Emperor doesn't get involved in the affairs of the underworld, Lady Blackpool has been getting involved in more and more things? I'm afraid it's not a good thing." "Shut up if you don't want to get into trouble," the former warned. "This is not something you and I should worry about. Don't say such things in the future." "Got it." The latter shook his head helplessly. The former sized up his surroundings once more and said calmly, "Let's go. Let's go back." The 2 of them had just turned around when they suddenly shuddered at the same time. Their gazes burned as they stared at the Netherworld gate. Of the 2 knockers on the gate of the Netherworld, only one remained. One of the heaven-devouring beast heads was missing. Not only a knocker, but 2 of its fangs were also missing. No one knew where they went. After the 2 of them stared at it for a while, the latter said in bewilderment, "Look at the saw marks on it. It seems that it was cut off by someone." The former was dumbfounded and speechless for a while. Then he murmured, "Who is so daring to destroy the things on the gate of the Netherworld?" The latter scratched his head and said, "Logically speaking, it's impossible. This is not a place that anyone can come to. The people of the underworld can't open the gate of the Netherworld from the inside without the token. And the mortals of the outside world can't pass through the Netherworld Fire Sea and come here. Could it be the work of the ghost cultivators in the human world?" The former shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be the ghost cultivators. Once the ghost cultivators come here, their vitality will be burned away by the Netherworld Fire Sea and they can't return to the human world. Otherwise, their souls will be destroyed and they will never be able to reincarnate. The only way for the ghost cultivators to come here is to open the gate of the Netherworld and return to the underworld. Once they turn back, they will die. It's not this and it's not that. What is going on? It can't fall down by itself, can it? Even if it fell down, we should still be able to see something on the ground. There are clear saw marks on it. Could it be? The latter suddenly stopped talking. The former turned his head and asked, "Could it be what?" The latter looked around and said softly, "Big brother, don't you think this is a little strange? Why did Madame Blackpool have to patrol the 72 underworld passages at this time? It just so happened that the gate of the netherworld here was destroyed. Could it be that someone inside was ordered to come out and do it?" The former heard this and frowned deeply. After thinking for a long time, he said in a deep voice, "Don't make wild guesses. We just need to report it truthfully. We don't need to worry about other things. Let's go back." The two of them turned into two white lights and shot into the gate of the netherworld. They instantly disappeared into the black light that rotated like a disc-shaped flowing cloud. Not long after, the gate of the netherworld let out a dull sound that made people's hearts palpitate again and slowly closed. The moment the door closed, the underground space that had been created by the chaotic images slowly returned to normal. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, the surging strong wind suddenly gradually slowed down, and the ink-like yin chi also slowly withdrew. Very soon, everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Standing on the opposite cliff wall, Yu Ji and the group of ghost generals were looking at each other. None of them knew what was happening in the underworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators waited for a long time, but they didn't see any abnormal reaction. Yu Ji frowned and waved her hand, "We'll talk about it when we get back." Then the group of ghost cultivators quickly left the place. Beside the 1,000 Miles Lake on Shantian Island, Bai Changchun waved his hand after the scene in the Mirror of Silence returned to normal. He waved his hand and kept the mirror as he looked at the sky with his hands behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. The vast netherworld formed a world of its own. The ultimate place of birth, aging, sickness, and death was the netherworld. 20 big blood-red words were engraved on a huge black stone tablet. They could be seen clearly from afar. The stone tablet and the ancient words revealed the vicissitudes of time. They were simple and unadorned, yet extraordinary. Anyone who saw it would have the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Under the base of the stone tablet that looked like a mountain, a gate slowly opened. 2 white lights flashed and the gate slowly closed. The 2 people who appeared in front of the gate were the 2 white-robed men who appeared outside the gate to the netherworld. In front of the gate, there were 2 soldiers in iron armor guarding. They were tall and sturdy, their backs were strong and their waists were strong. Their eyes were wide like copper bells as they stared at the newcomers. The 2 white-robed men each turned to face a soldier and took out a green token the size of a palm. They said, "Lu Ben Lu Pao returned to the netherworld to report." They took out the token to prove that they were not ghost cultivators from the outside world. The guards here only recognized the token. Without the token, they would be escorted to the endless dark cliff to work as laborers. One of the soldiers shouted in a booming voice, "Since you have the token, you are not allowed to stay. Leave quickly." His loud voice echoed in the surroundings. The 2 white-robed men didn't say anything else. They cupped their fists and turned into 2 white lights as they fled into the distance. The 2 of them had been flying at high speed in the darkness. It was dark everywhere. Only the red flowing lava could be seen on the ground, mixed with the black smoke. On the path separating the ground from the lava, one could see a group of people working with thick iron chains with their upper arms bare. The sun, moon, and stars could never be seen here, and the sky was always shrouded in darkness. This place was vast and boundless. Nobody knew how high the sky was or how wide the earth was. There was only endless darkness. It was because this was the underworld, a world of its own. In the vast depths that ordinary people couldn't know of, there were countless powerful overlords who carved out territories to carve out territories. Even though they had high cultivation states and powerful magic power, they had to submit to one person, the king of the entire underworld, the emperor of the underworld. As for the name of the emperor of the underworld, very few people knew it. Almost no one knew it. People only knew that he was called the emperor of the underworld. It was because the emperor of the underworld had existed for too long. All the overlords rose and fell. Only the emperor of the underworld existed forever in the underworld. No one could challenge his authority. Even though the emperor of the underworld rarely showed his power, and few people knew what he looked like, those who tried to challenge the emperor of the underworld were all killed. The emperor of the underworld was a figure that most people in the underworld could only see once in their lives. Even if they saw him, no one would know that he was the emperor of the underworld. The twin brothers Lu Ben and Lu Pao were very lucky. They knew what the emperor of the underworld looked like because they had seen the emperor of the underworld, and because they worked in the underworld royal palace. Even though their cultivation states were not high, and they were just small errand boys, they had seen the Emperor of the Underworld. The towering Emperor of the Underworld mountain. It had been standing there for countless years. Maybe it had been there since the beginning of time. It was the most sacred place in the entire Underworld. Because the most honorable and holy Emperor of the Underworld lived in the magnificent Underworld Royal Palace on the peak of the mountain. On the Emperor of the Underworld mountain, flowing lights were flying everywhere. They were fist-sized fireflies. Even though they looked ferocious, the light balls on their tails were unusually bright. It was these flying insects that illuminated the entire Emperor of the Underworld mountain. There were 6 mountain peaks on the Emperor of the Underworld mountain. The Emperor of the Underworld was on the highest mountain peak. The other 5 mountain peaks were in the shape of a pentagram, surrounding and protecting the most sacred Emperor of the Underworld. Of course, there was also a magnificent palace on each of the other 5 mountain peaks. The masters of those palaces were all figures whose status was second only to the Emperor of the Underworld. However, there were differences in status among the 5 masters. The master who lived on the first mountain to the left of the Emperor of the Underworld was the one with the most power and the highest status among the 5 masters, besides the Emperor of the Underworld. For many years, the Emperor of the Underworld rarely showed up and interfered with anything. Most of the affairs were handled by this master. Lu Ben and Lu Pao landed on this mountain peak. To be exact, they landed outside the gate of the palace on the mountain peak. Even though they worked in the Emperor of the Underworld, they didn't dare to trespass this palace. The Dark Palace of Madame He Chi. Chapter 640. In front of the Grand Palace Gate, there were 2 rows of soldiers standing guard. All of them wore black iron armor. The strangest thing was that everyone wore a black iron mask on their faces. The mask was hideous and terrifying like a demon. The indifferent gaze from the 2 holes made people shudder. It was Lu Ben's first time here, but he knew that these black-armored soldiers were soldiers transferred from the Onyx Army. The Onyx Army was a powerful army that terrified the people of the Underworld. They were Madame Blackpool's personal guards. Many large fireflies climbed on the palace gate, illuminating the scene in front of the palace gate clearly. However, it also showed the oppressive atmosphere in front of the palace gate. A heavily armored general stood in the middle of the palace gate. His gaze behind the mask seemed to be real as he sized up the 2. The eldest of the twins, Lu Ben, was obviously not here for the first time. He nodded at his younger brother, Lu Ben. The latter took out a green token and gave it to him. Lu Ben held the 2 tokens and said respectfully, Lu Ben, report to Madam. You come in. You stay here and wait." The general in the middle of the palace gate pointed at the 2 and moved aside to make way. Lu Ben signaled his brother to wait patiently and then walked in with large strides. The inside of the palace was spacious and grand, but it seemed deserted. There didn't seem to be a single person in sight. In the middle, there was a passageway that led straight to the towering Onyx Palace. Every 10 meters there was a diamond-shaped stone pillar. The stone pillar was covered with huge fireflies, decorating the entire stone pillar into a lamp post. The path to the majestic Onyx Palace was more than 300 meters long. Although there wasn't a single person in the square, Lu Ben didn't dare to be careless. He looked straight ahead and maintained a steady pace as he walked forward. He knew that this seemingly free space was actually tight on the inside and heavily guarded. It was several times stricter than the Onyx Palace's defenses. Who knew how many people were secretly watching him? The majestic Onyx Palace was brightly lit. Lu Ben bowed and stopped under the base platform that was dozens of meters high. On top of the steps, a female official wearing a male civil official uniform looked down at him. Although she was dressed in a man's uniform, she had a pretty face and was a beauty. She said coldly, "Madam is bathing." "Wait." Then she turned and left. "Yes." Lu Ben lowered his head and stood there, not daring to move. In the back hall of the Onyx Nether Palace, there was a place covered by a black veil that was steaming hot. Behind the gauze curtain was a huge bathing pool made of black jade. The warm water in the pool carried a faint smell of sulfur. It flowed into and out of a small ditch. It was a hot spring. A naked and delicate body was soaking in the water. It was a body that was extremely alluring to men. Her plump breasts rose high, and her skin was as smooth as cream. Her figure was moderately plump, and a beautiful face appeared on the surface of the water. Her head was resting on the thigh of the man behind her, and 2 hands were gently massaging her temples. The body that men couldn't refuse was soaking in the hot spring. 5 handsome and strong men surrounded her, not even a single strand of cloth on them. Although those alluring bodies were irresistible to men, There was no trace of impulsive desire in the eyes of these 5 men. Their expressions were cautious. 2 hands were massaging her head, and the remaining 8 hands were carefully massaging various parts of her body. The plump and ravine private parts were not left behind. The 8 hands were moving and massaging every part of her body. Resting on the thigh of the man, the beautiful face looked extremely comfortable. Her eyes were hazy and her lips were slightly open, letting out a soft moan. The gauze curtain was lifted, and the female official who was outside the hall walked in. Seeing that the woman in the pool was enjoying herself, she lowered her head and waited quietly. The woman in the pool closed her eyes and said, "Fei Feng, what's the matter?" Although her words were normal, her tone was full of arrogance. The female official who was called Fei Feng said respectfully, "Madam, Liu Ben, who was patrolling the 72 world passages, has returned to report. He is waiting outside the hall." The woman in the pool softly nodded and slightly raised her hand. The 5 massaging men immediately stopped. The 5 men gently carried the naked body out of the hot spring and put her down on the shore. Immediately, someone brought a towel to dry the water droplets on her body. Another person brought a black palace gauze dress and helped her put it on. The black gauze curtain was lifted, and a beautiful woman wearing a black palace gauze dress walked out. Her face was so cold that no expression could be seen on it. She had an extremely noble temperament, which was completely different from her appearance in the hot spring. Dragging a 3-meter-long skirt, she walked to the main hall and gently sat on the seat of honor. Her phoenix eyes coldly looked outside the hall. This was the famous Madame He Chi in the netherworld. The female official, Fei Feng, quickly led Liu Ben in. Liu Ben walked to the hall and knelt down. He did not dare to raise his head and reported the results of the inspection in detail. After listening to him expressionlessly, Madame He Chi raised her hand, and Fei Feng quickly led Liu Ben out. From the beginning to the end, Madame He Chi didn't say a word to Liu Ben. In the cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu's stall had been open for a whole day. Except for Yan Juexing, no one asked about it. Ziyi waited excitedly for a long time, but as she waited, she became listless. She did not have the patience to do this business that had no customers anymore. In the end, she pulled Farong and ran back. After a whole day, Yu Qianqiu knew that there was no point in continuing to set up the stall. With such a high price, it was estimated that no one would buy it anymore. What made him suspicious was that it was Yan Juexing and his men who bought a large amount of 7-star blood orchids from the treasure tower. He packed up the stall and returned to the one family's shop. Nongzhu called him up from the window on the top floor. With a dark face, Yu Qianqiu turned a deaf ear and went back to his room. Sometimes, when you were unhappy, you needed to show it and let others know that you were unhappy. Otherwise, others would easily make you unhappy again in the future. The 3 people on the top floor looked at each other. When Lan Feng smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that he is still angry. He is giving us a hard time. This guy has a problem. I will go and have a look." Nongzhu swaggered down the stairs. Ziyi and Farong were in the room and continued to fiddle with the things they bought. When Yu Qianqiu came in and looked at the room that had almost become a warehouse, he said to Ziyi with a dark face, "Go back to your room." Ziyi naturally wanted to oppose him, but when she saw that Yu Qianqiu seemed to be really unhappy, he stuck out his bright red tongue at Farong, threw away the things in his hands and quickly left. Farong looked at Yu Qianqiu weakly and said, "Are you unhappy? Did I make you angry?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and bolted the door and window. With a dark face, he nodded and said, "Yes, you made me unhappy." Farong immediately became nervous. She put down the things in her hands and whispered, "What did I do wrong? I will definitely change." "Well, you haven't let me touch you for a long time. This is your biggest mistake." Yu Qianqiu walked behind her and suddenly laughed. He put his arms around her waist and slid one of his hands directly into her collar. Farong immediately let out a cry of surprise. The couple rolled on the bed and made love. Nongzhu came down and met Ziyi, who was running away. They talked casually for a while. Ziyi told her that Yu Qianqiu was angry. Nongzhu waved her hand disapprovingly and asked Ziyi to go back first. She still swaggered to the door of Yu Qianqiu's room. She pushed the door but found it was bolted. When she was about to use her divine sense to have a look, Yu Qianqiu's roar suddenly came from inside, "Get out of my way! Don't ruin my plan." Then came the messy voice. Nongzhu was stunned and muttered awkwardly, "What bad luck." She slapped the door heavily and shouted, "When you are done, come up here. I have something to tell you." Then she turned around and went back. After returning upstairs, when Lan Feng saw that he looked strange and asked, "How is it?" "Wait a little longer. He is busy." Nongzhu could only say so. When Lan Feng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and were curious about what Yu Qianqiu was busy with, they quickly released their divine sense to check downstairs. With their cultivation, this distance was really nothing. They were shocked when they saw it. Their divine sense shrank back as if they were escaping. When Lan Feng looked embarrassed and didn't say a word, Lu Yanqing bit her teeth behind the green veil and blushed. Fortunately, the green veil blocked it and others couldn't see it. No matter how high their cultivation was, it was not used to peep at others. Nongzhu looked at the slightly shocked reaction of the two and laughed like a thief. She said, "I can't help it. This guy is used to being shameless. He doesn't care about the occasion. It's not the first time I've met him. You just have to get used to it." They waited for a long time. When Yu Qianqiu came, he looked comfortable in the face of the three people who were a little unnatural. He asked as if nothing had happened, "What can I do for you three seniors?" Fortunately, Nongzhu was also thick-skinned. Seeing that he didn't care, she was even more unconcerned. She asked, "How many 7-star blood orchids do you have?" "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked with a vigilant face. "You want my things again?" Nongzhu's words blocked Nongzhu's words. These words made the three people a little embarrassed. Yes, it was true that they wanted his things again. As the person involved, Lu Yanqing said, "Yu Qianqiu, I want to buy a few 7-star blood orchids to study their medicinal properties, but your price is too high. I can't afford that much money. Can you make it cheaper?" She couldn't say it for free. Yu Qianqiu looked at her suspiciously. His eyes flashed and he said, "Senior Lu, the person who bought a lot of 7-star blood orchids in Treasure Tower?" Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng also looked at Lu Yanqing when they heard this. The latter immediately shook her head and said, "You misunderstood. I didn't buy anything from Treasure Tower. I just thought of it when I saw you buying a lot." "I see." Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and said, "When I sell things, I only increase the price. I never do anything like reduce the price. Otherwise, I don't sell at all." As soon as these words came out, Wen Lanfeng's face didn't look good. Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, don't go too far. It's already a great honor for the master of Lingfang Valley to ask for your help. Don't get greedy for money." Chapter 641. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Did I say I want money?" Ignoring Nongzhu's astonishment, he asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior Lu, how many do you need?" They were stunned by him. When Lanfeng's eyes were full of praise and he nodded slightly. Lu Yanqing said with some embarrassment, "How can I ask for your things for free? You use them to make money." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand generously and said, "I didn't say I would give them to you for free." When Lan Feng and Nongzhu's faces darkened at the same time, Lu Yanqing was speechless. She felt embarrassed just now. It turned out that it was not for free. She asked in an unnatural tone, "What are your conditions?" Yu Qianqiu ignored Wen Lanfeng and Nongzhu's murderous eyes and said, "Do me a favor. Help me take 2 people to your Lingfang Valley and temporarily protect their safety." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu were slightly stunned, Lu Yanqing asked curiously, "Which 2 people? You might as well tell me first. If it's suitable, I can promise you." "It's suitable. It's most suitable for them to go to your place because they are 2 women." Yu Qianqiu smiled somewhat helplessly and said, "One of them is Yi Kun, who lives here. And the other one, Yan Yu, the proprietress of Sleeping Spring House. Help me take them away." When Lan Feng was finally relieved when he heard that it was 2 women. But he asked curiously, "Yi Kun is reasonable. What's the relationship between you and Yan Yu? Why do you want to take her away?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Niu Yud has something to do and left. I was entrusted by Niu Yud to protect her temporarily." "So that's it." When Lan Feng believed it. But Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing, who understood that Yu Qianqiu was Niu Yud, looked at each other and knew what was going on. "Okay, I promise you." Lu Yanqing nodded. "Thank you, senior." Yu Qianqiu thanked him first and then frowned, "But I'm worried that Yan Yu doesn't want to go. I'll have to trouble you to tell her that it's Niu Yud's idea. If she still doesn't want to go, you can take her away by force." "Take her away by force?" Lu Yanqing hesitated. "I know you may not want to do that." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Wen Lanfeng and said, "I wonder if Senior Wen can help me escort them to Spirit Fang Valley." Nongzhu was speechless. This guy really knows how to pick people. When Lan Feng is 100% willing to go to Lingfang Valley, let alone with such a high-sounding reason. Qianqiu was a bit. You is to say, you is, but he seems he is arranging his planning his funeral. Sure enough, when Lanfeng's eyes lit up, but he still found a way out of this embarrassing situation. He said with a smile, "It's not impossible for me to help you. The key is how many 7-star blood orchids you are willing to give me." "That's not a problem." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and asked Lu Yanqing, "Senior, how many do you want?" Lu Yanqing asked hesitantly, "How about 5? If you can't, I can give you less." She did want 5 stalks, but when she thought that 1 stalk was worth 200 million, 5 stalks would be 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. Compared to protecting 2 people, this price was too cheap for her. 10. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to Lu Yanqing, but he said to Wen Lanfeng, "What do you think about giving 10 7-star blood orchids to Senior Lu?" Lu Yanqing was a bit angry. It was her business. Why did he always bring Wen Lanfeng into it? Wen Lanfeng glanced at Lu Yanqing and said, "Don't ask me about it. You ask her." Nongzhu knew what they were thinking and immediately interrupted, "All right. All right. It's settled." "Good." Yu Qianqiu readily agreed. He took out 10 pots of 7-star blood orchids from his storage bag on the spot and placed them on the ground. Lu Yanqing saw that things were like this and there was nothing to do. She put away the 10 pots of blood orchids. After the handover, Yu Qianqiu said to Nongzhu, "You'd better take Furong and Ziyi back as soon as possible. It may not be peaceful here recently. Don't worry about me. I have a trump card to deal with it." Nongzhu laughed for a while and taught him a lesson. "You'd better take care of yourself. This time you made Hu Changshu lose face in front of all the heroes in the world. He will settle accounts with you sooner or later. Be careful." Seeing that he was so confident, Yu Qianqiu was silent for a little and then said to the 3, "I won't bother you anymore. I have something to do. I have to go to the Ice Palace's shop." Nongzhu exclaimed, "What are you going to do there? The hatred of the second disciple of the Ice Palace has always been on your head. Do you want to die?" "Humph." Yu Qianqiu said arrogantly, "Although his cultivation is high, I'm afraid it's not so easy to kill me." "Don't worry. He can't kill me." Then he turned around and left. "Don't be so arrogant. Be careful," Nongzhu shouted from behind. In the main hall of the Dark Nether Palace, the noble and cold Lady Blackpool walked slowly in the hall with her long dress trailing behind her. Her eyes were flickering for a long time. Suddenly, she waved her sleeve and turned into a ball of black light. She flew out of the palace and directly flew to the highest peak protected by the 5 peaks. On the roof of the ancient, magnificent, sacred and mysterious Dark Nether Palace, a dozen people suddenly appeared. They stared at the black light in the sky and their expressions changed. They looked at each other and disappeared again without saying a word. The black light seemed to have found the right direction. It flashed toward the back palace of the Dark Nether Palace and directly shot toward a small building surrounded by the deepwood forest. Just as it was about to break through the door of the small building, a flash of silver lightning directly repelled the black light with a bang. The black light appeared and Lady Blackpool staggered back for a dozen steps. She didn't stop until she reached a tree trunk in the deepwood forest. Lady Blackpool frowned and yelled harshly, "Qian Jun, how dare you attack me?" A silver light flashed in front of the building. A middle-aged man wearing silver armor, with long hair flying in the wind and stubble all over his face showed up. He stared at her indifferently and said, "Blackpool, this is not a place for you to behave atrociously. Don't you know where this place is? You can't trespass without permission." Lady Blackpool gritted her teeth and said with resentment in her eyes, "I will go wherever I want. It's not up to you, a servant. Get out of my way. I want to see the Emperor of the Underworld." The middle-aged man called Qian Jun said emotionlessly, "The Emperor of the Underworld is painting and can't be disturbed. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise don't blame me, a servant, for kicking you out of the Dark Nether Palace." "You." Lady Blackpool didn't know what to say. She knew she was no match for Qian Jun. She lifted her dress and knelt down in front of the building saying, "Blackpool is here to see the Emperor of the Underworld. I have something important to report." After a moment of silence, a nonchalant voice came out from the building, "Qian Jun, let her in." His tone was gentle, making anyone who heard it feel comfortable in their heart. It was filled with a calmness that stood aloof from worldly affairs. "Yes." Qian Jun bowed to the inside of the building. With a flash of silver light, he disappeared. Lady Blackpool stood up and glanced around with resentment in her eyes. She waved her hand to smooth the long tail of her dress. In the blink of an eye, she had become another noble lady. He slowly walked into the small building. The decorations in the building were elegant, without a trace of luxury. Instead, there were many ancient scrolls piled up. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe that the Emperor of the Underworld, who was famous in the Underworld, would live here. She might even think that this was the humble residence of a scholar. Lady Blackpool glanced over the scrolls piled up. A hint of disdain flashed in her eyes, but it soon disappeared. She walked up the wooden stairs to the attic. As soon as she climbed up the attic, she saw the back of a man in a thin white robe. Looking from the back, he looked like a scholar. He was writing in front of a writing desk. Blackpool greets the Emperor of the Underworld. Lady Blackpool knelt down again. The scholar continued writing. He said without turning his head, "Blackpool, why do you need to see me so urgently?" He looked like a harmless scholar, but no one could imagine that he was the Emperor of the Underworld, the ruler of the Underworld. Madame Heichi stood up and complained, "Emperor of the Underworld, why don't you control your subordinates? They even dared to attack me. What will happen to them in the future? They won't even take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." The scholar let out a non-committal laugh and said, "I don't want to manage anything anymore. That's why I've delegated the authority to you guys. If you guys really don't want to, I can consider managing things again. That way you guys can have peace and quiet." Lady Blackpool's expression changed. She said with a smile, "The Emperor of the Underworld is happy and angry." It was Blackpool who didn't know his place and shouldn't have quarreled with Qianjun. The Emperor of the Underworld has worked hard for the Underworld for many years. As his subordinates, we should share the burden of the Emperor of the Underworld. We shouldn't have any complaints. I'm relieved to hear that. The scholar didn't stop writing. He dipped his brush into the ink and asked, "Why do you need to see me so urgently?" Here's the thing. A few days ago, I sent someone to check the underworld passages of the 72 worlds in the human world. They found that the gate to the underworld in one of the worlds was damaged, and a knocker was stolen. Lady Blackpool said angrily, "I didn't expect someone to be so daring. He even dared to damage the gate to the underworld. The people in the human world are getting more and more daring. They obviously don't take the Emperor of the Underworld seriously." Blackpool asked the Emperor of the Underworld to send someone to punish them. The scholar unhappily snorted. The brush in his hand stopped as he coldly said, "Heichi, how dare you to ignore my words? Did you forget my warning? Without my permission, no one from the underworld can intrude the human world. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry. The Emperor of the Underworld is angry." Lady Blackpool knelt down again with a frightened expression. She explained, "Blackpool didn't let anyone intrude the human world. He just sent someone to check the passage to the underworld. Blackpool has no selfish motives. He did it for the sake of the underworld. That's why he sent 2 servants from the underworld royal palace to carry it out. I believe they wouldn't dare to disobey the order of the Emperor of the Underworld. Remember, the human world is the foundation of the underworld. Without my permission, no one is allowed to intrude and disturb the order of the human world." Having said that, the scholar continued writing and said, "It seems that your prestige is getting higher and higher. You can even command the servants of the underworld royal palace." Chapter 642. Though he said it casually, every word was sharp and penetrating. Madame Blackpool was frightened, not knowing if the underworld emperor was just saying it casually or if he meant it. She forced herself to smile embarrassedly. Blackpool knows his own limitations. Without the underworld emperor's favor, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's good that you understand. The scholar raised his hand and said with his back facing her, "You can leave now if you have nothing else to say." Blackpool hadn't achieved her goal yet, so she wouldn't leave willingly. She gritted her teeth and pulled off the black silk tied around her waist. She shook her shoulders slightly, and the black gauze on her royal dress slid off her shoulders, exposing her snow-white and plump body to the air. Madame Blackpool stood up slowly and walked out from the pile of black gauze, walking to the back of the scholar. She wrapped her arms around the scholar's waist and said while twisting her body, "Blackpool hasn't served the underworld emperor for a long time." "Wait a moment. As you wish." The scholar chuckled. His hand didn't stop moving. Madame Blackpool uttered a happily. She tilted her head to look at the painting scroll on the desk that was about to be completed. Her pupils shrank after a quick glance. A magnificent colorful painting scroll unfolded in front of her eyes. An earth-shattering battle scene was vividly depicted on the paper. The bloody, tragic and exciting battle was depicted with the tip of the scholar's brush. Countless experts from both the immortal realm and the netherworld surrounded one person, and the person who was surrounded in the picture scroll was full of heroic spirit. He was like a god of slaughter, riding a vigorous red divine dragon into the sky and into the ground, controlling tens of thousands of golden rays as if he was invincible. Countless people were killed by him, turning into a rain of blood. In the painting, a man in white armor and a man in a golden robe had a terrifyingly high cultivation state. They were entangled with the man riding the dragon. When Madame Blackpool saw the man in white armor, her naked body stiffened a bit. She knew 6 of the 12 armored warriors behind the man in white armor. One of them was the silver-armored warrior who had defeated her in front of the small building. The man in white armor who was fighting shoulder to shoulder with the man in a golden robe was the Underworld Emperor himself. Isn't this the Underworld Emperor? Madame Blackpool stiffly reached out a white arm and pointed at the white-armored man who was fighting fiercely. The scholar replied with a non-committal, His brows were solemn and his brush did not stop moving. His strokes were fine to the point that the slightest detail could be seen, vividly reflecting the intense battle atmosphere in the painting. After a while he finally completed a section of the scroll. He exhaled softly and put the brush in his hand aside. He examined the painting with a grave expression and said, "For so many years, this scene has been haunting my mind, and I can't get it out of my head. I might as well draw it so that people in the future will know about it. After all, not many people know about it anymore." He seems to be interested now. He looks back at Lady Blackpool's seductive body and raises his hand to touch her plump breasts. But Madame Blackpool seemed to be attracted by the content of the scroll. She pointed at the 12 armored warriors and asked, "Are these the 12 legendary underworld generals?" The scholar nodded slightly and said, "That's right. Unfortunately, 6 of my 12 beloved generals died in that battle. Among the remaining 6, Black Armor died in the war. The army of the dark underworld that you took over is his former subordinate. Now, only the Silver Armor Warrior and the other 4 are left. Silver Armor Warrior is my personal guard, and he has been guarding the Underworld Royal Palace. The other 4 are the masters of the other 4 palaces on the Underworld Emperor Mountain. They are my brothers who have followed me to conquer the world. So I have to warn you. Don't ever let me hear you call them slaves again. Otherwise, I don't mind destroying your cultivation and sending you to the endless dark sea to be a laborer." Blackpool shuddered. No wonder these 5 guys always looked down on her. They were the 12 legendary underworld generals of the underworld. But so what? The legend would be replaced one day. Blackpool, I know I was wrong. I didn't expect them to be the 12 underworld generals who follow the Emperor of the Underworld. I thought the 12 underworld generals had died a long time ago. Madame Blackpool twisted her body in the scholar's arms. She said in a wrong tone, "They know I am your woman, but they still don't treat me nicely. It is obvious that they don't respect you, Underworld Emperor." The scholar caressed her smooth buttocks and laughed. "Ignorance is not a crime. I won't pursue the past. Also, they have followed me for many years. Even if they didn't contribute much, they still worked hard. You are too young to show off your status in front of them. You should endure it. It is only a matter of face. You won't lose anything. I will listen to the Emperor of the Underworld." Lady Blackpool's naked body wriggled again. She pointed at the man in the golden robe who fought alongside the Emperor of the Underworld and asked, "Who is he? How can he have such a terrifying cultivation?" "Jean Tai of the Immortal Realm. He is the immortal emperor you speak of. His name is Jean Tai." The scholar smiled. "Immortal Emperor?" Blackpool couldn't help but exclaim. She pointed at the man riding the dragon and asked, "Who is he? How come he forced the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor to fight together?" She looked at the others who were attacking the man. She didn't finish her sentence because she didn't want to embarrass the Emperor of the Underworld. The scholar gazed at the man riding the dragon on the scroll with a solemn expression. He said slowly, "He came from a place that was sealed by Jean Tai and me. I still don't know how he got out of the place. I don't know his name. I have never heard of him in that place. He called himself the Myriad Swords Demonic Monarch, and his cultivation state is very high. What happened next? Where is that sealed place?" Madame Blackpool asked curiously. The scholar slapped her buttocks forcefully with one hand and pinched her chin with the other, saying, "Didn't you say you would serve me? Why do you care so much?" Lady Blackpool was bewildered. Then she undressed the scholar with a flower-like smile. The 2 of them fell down on the ground. Amorous feelings immediately overflowed in the small building. Madame Blackpool tried her best to flatter the scholar and tried her best to please him. After a while, the 2 of them hugged each other. Lady Blackpool leaned on the scholar and complained, "You asked me to maintain the order of the underworld, but the gate to the underworld has been damaged. If I don't do anything, how will the people think of me? What are you trying to say? The scholar asked carelessly. At least you should take back the ring that was stolen, Lady Blackpool said. The scholar's eyes turned cold. He glanced at her and said, I heard that you are still longing for the blue sky, the green water, the singing birds, the fragrant flowers, the sun, the moon, and the stars in the human world. It seems like the rumor is true. However, this was also human nature. She was a woman after all. Women like the feasting and bustling life and can't stand the endless darkness of the underworld. Emperor of the underworld, you misunderstood me. I don't know who is framing me. Lady Blackpool wiggled her body and said in a spoiled manner, if we don't do anything and don't pursue this matter, someone might destroy the gate to the underworld in the future. It seems like you don't understand what I mean. The scholar humphed, I'm warning you, the cycle of the heavenly Tao has its own destiny. Even immortal Emperor Jin Tai and I can't get rid of this restriction. If you really want to get rid of this restriction, don't even think about it unless you become a god. Otherwise, you will bring a great disaster to yourself and the underworld. Become a god? Lady Blackpool was startled and flattered. Emperor of the underworld, aren't you the god of the underworld? Who dares to restrict you? If nothing can restrict me, why would I hide in the endless darkness for so many years? There are some things that you won't understand until you reach that level. The scholar stared at the ceiling and sighed, there is something called the cycle of the heavenly Tao. For example, the demon realm. Demon realm? Lady Blackpool propped up her naked upper body and asked, is it the demonic Tao that was rampant in the ancient times? The scholar nodded, yes. You won't understand how arrogant the demon realm was if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I know it clearly. The demon realm almost suppressed the immortal realm and the underworld. But what about the retribution? The demon realm was sealed, and the demon children and grandsons who stayed in the other realms were massacred and paid a heavy price. Is the demon realm the place where you and immortal emperor sealed? Lady Blackpool asked. The scholar didn't say yes or no. He continued, back then Jin Tai and I didn't realize the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Later, because of the appearance of a pearl in the human world, the immortal realm and the underworld fought in the human world. The souls of countless living beings in the human world were destroyed, and they didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. This was the result of retribution. At that time Jin Tai and I were blinded by greed and didn't realize this. Lady Blackpool's eyes flashed as she carefully asked, what kind of pearl could tempt you an immortal emperor? The scholar ignored her and continued to murmur as if he was recalling an unforgettable past. No one expected the retribution to come so fast. At this time, that Thousand Swords demon monarch came out of nowhere and killed people in the immortal realm and the underworld in the name of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Without a choice, Jin Tai and I joined forces again to protect ourselves, but we were still no match for him. We were almost trapped by a grand formation he set up. Luckily we escaped quickly. Luckily the Thousand Swords demon monarch was too arrogant and fell into Jin Tai's trap. He was severely wounded and finally fell into our hands. Lady Blackpool was fascinated by the story. She didn't think that there was someone that the Emperor of Hell and Immortal Emperor couldn't defeat. How powerful was this person? However, after the Thousand Swords demon monarch fell, the pearl suddenly disappeared without a trace. We couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried. It was as if it was just a dramatic farce, like a dream or a dream. After waking up from the dream, Jin Tai and I looked back at the devastated human world and were shocked. We didn't know how many living beings were killed by this farce. At this time the heavenly Tao warned us. The entire human world was covered in dark clouds. Countless powerful golden thunderbolts struck and chased after Jin Tai and me. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape and return. Chapter 643. After that incident, Jin Tai and I realized that there is an irresistible force maintaining the balance in the world. It is invisible and untouchable. No matter who it is, the demon realm, the immortal realm, the underworld, or the human world, once they break the balance they will be severely punished. The scholar looked solemn. Madame Blackpool felt her hair standing on end when she heard this. She looked out of the window and smiled unnaturally. Don't worry, Emperor of Netherworld. It has been a long time. Everything is fine now. Fine. Who knows? Maybe it is the preparation of the final score. Once it explodes, I don't know what the consequences will be. The scholar sighed. The great war in the human world almost killed all the living beings in the human world. It caused such a terrible consequence. It is not something that can be easily forgotten. The demon realm did evil, so Jintai and I punished it severely. When Jintai and I committed evil deeds, the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch came to punish us. Fortunately, the two of us managed to escape. Then the golden thunder fell from the sky, but we dodged it again. Madame Blackpool giggled. Isn't it good? It means that Emperor of Netherworld is powerful enough to resist the unknown force. It can't do anything to you. You can't say it like that. I don't want it to happen again and again. I don't want it to happen again. I hope it will be over. If there is a third time, I am afraid that the punishment will be more severe after such a long time. It won't give us any chance to escape. Maybe both the immortal realm and the underworld realm will pay the unforgivable price for their evil deeds in the human world. The scholar suddenly smiled bitterly. I am a bit curious. If there is a final punishment, who will be the one to administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Will there really be a person who will administer the punishment on behalf of the heaven? Madame Blackpool asked weakly. His eyes flickered as he thought about how he had always wanted to replace a certain someone. He faintly suspected that he would be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens. Once this thought appeared, it was like a seed that began to sprout in his mind. No one can be sure. It is just a hunch. The scholar pushed her away and stood up naked. Madame Blackpool quickly got up and helped him put on his clothes. Then she put on her clothes too. The scholar looked at her and said, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that you shouldn't think that the mortals in the human world are easy to bully. There is a pair of eyes in the unseen world that can see everything. Since you've already been born in the netherworld, you're a person of the netherworld. Don't think about the prosperity of the world anymore. No one can get everything they want. I can't, Kim can't, and you can't either. After saying this, the scholar walked to the desk, picked up the brush again, dipped it in ink, and continued with the next part of the scroll. Do you really think that I, Blackpool, am a 3-year-old kid? You can fool me with some nonsense. The Madam of Blackpool didn't think so, but she replied, Blackpool will remember the Emperor of the Underworld's teachings. But what about the knocker that was stolen from the Underworld gate? Are we really going to let the gate to the Underworld break and just stand there like that? What else can we do? The scholar continued, the gate of the Netherworld has existed since ancient times. I don't know who built it, but the materials used to forge it are extremely strange. Even I don't know what they are. It's easy to break them but difficult to merge them. Once they are separated, it will be difficult to merge them again. It's said that one has to use the 3 true fire to forge it. But the people who know how to use the 3 true fire have disappeared. What else can we do? Since it's such a precious item, we can't lose it, said the Madam of Blackpool. Oh, you can tell me what you think, the scholar asked. She waited for a while, but the scholar didn't respond. She stopped writing and turned around. Just tell me what you want to say. Please forgive me. The Madam of Blackpool braced herself and said, we can send someone out to find the lost item. Emperor of the Underworld, please don't misunderstand me. I have no intention of disturbing the order of the human world. Think about it. A person who has the ability to break into the gate to the underworld must not be an ordinary mortal. The person who dared to steal the item from the gate to the underworld must have a purpose. Otherwise, who would do such a thing? What if someone uses the lost knocker to forge a treasure that will bring harm to the human world? If we ignore it, what is the difference between that and disturbing the order of the human world? The scholar seemed to change his expression. He asked with furrowed brows, can we find it? We can try. If we can't find it, then forget it. Madam of Blackpool bowed and said, if the Emperor of the Underworld agrees, I will send someone out to investigate in secret. Whether we can find it or not, we won't disturb the order of the human world. The scholar paused for a while and turned around to continue writing, saying, just this once. No matter what the result is, there is no second time. If there is a second time, you don't have to serve me anymore. Go to the boundless dark cliff and serve those laborers. This was considered as an agreement. The Madam of Blackpool was delighted. Blackpool obeys your order. I agreed to let you send someone out, but I didn't agree to let you go in person, the scholar said coldly. Madam of Blackpool's joy instantly vanished. She had tried so hard to go to the human world because she had stayed in the dim netherworld for too long. Outsiders couldn't understand how comfortable a beautiful woman like her was living in the human world. A woman's vanity couldn't be satisfied by a high cultivation state. Even if a group of men who looked like pigs were circling around her, looking at her lustfully every day, wishing they could take off her clothes, throw her on the bed and press her down, those evasive gazes could still satisfy her heart. But in this place, nobody dared to have any improper thoughts about her. They didn't even look at her lustfully, let alone say those vulgar flattering words. Nobody dared to do that because she was the woman of the Underworld Emperor. But then again, if it weren't for her beauty, the Underworld Emperor wouldn't have liked her at first sight and given her so many opportunities. Some women were used to those extravagant occasions, so it was hard for them to calm down and live a boring life day after day. One more day would make them restless. Those kinds of occasions were a fatal temptation for them. Even though she had died on such occasions in her previous life, she had finally created a chance to get some fresh air, but it was denied by the scholar's order. Madame Heiqi's heart was filled with irrepressible anger, but she didn't dare to show it. She bowed and said, "As the Underworld Emperor wishes, Heiqi will leave now." The scholar hummed without turning his head. Heiqi also lost interest in staying. He walked down the small building quietly and turned into a beam of black light as he fled to the door. The brush on the painting stopped and was put aside. The scholar's face showed the imposing manner of a person who had been in a superior position for a long time. This kind of indifferent attitude was like the Underworld Emperor who had awed the underworld. He called lightly, "Qian Jun." A beam of silver light flashed in from outside the window. A silver-armored man with long hair appeared. He cupped his hands and greeted with an imposing manner, "Underworld Emperor. What has this stupid woman been doing recently?" The Underworld Emperor clasped his hands behind his back and asked. Qian Jun immediately reported, "Recently she has been in frequent contact with the people of the immortal world. She has also been commanding the army of Dark Underworld to suppress the underworld overlords who are ready to make trouble. In addition, she has recruited some handsome male servants. Other than that, she has been meddling in the affairs of the Underworld Royal Palace, including dispatching people from the Underworld Royal Palace to patrol the underworld ways of the 72 worlds. Should we restrict her?" "Don't restrict her. Let her do as she pleases. I don't think she dares to overdo it. Otherwise, I will let her know what is worse than death," the Underworld Emperor snorted coldly. Qian Jun walked to his side and glanced at the painting on the desk, saying with furrowed brows, "Emperor of the Underworld, the power of the army of the Dark Underworld has grown very fast. Some of the older members have been purged and replaced by her trusted followers. Moreover, they have been slaughtering in the underworld, which has already made people panic. The mention of the army of Dark Underworld has changed their expressions. Are we going to let her continue to cause trouble? What's wrong with that? Many experts have emerged in the underworld these years. All of them are restless. Let her suppress them and get rid of those troublemakers." As the Underworld Emperor said this, he patted the bulging silver shoulder guard on Qian Jun's shoulder, sighing emotionally, "Only a few of our brothers are left. We have to preserve our strength to deal with possible crises. This kind of small fight is not worth your time. We can't let you guys fail miserably. Since the death of the Black Armor Destroyer, I've had this idea. That's why I found this stupid woman. Let her cause trouble." "Ehe. So that's how it is. I thought you were bewitched by her beauty," Qian Jun said with a smile as he touched the painting on the desk. "The other brothers are full of anger, and they even want to kill that woman to wake you up. It seems that I have to inform them in advance. Even though I know I have to tell them to keep acting like this and keep losing their temper. Don't be courteous to her. Although this woman is stupid, she is not stupid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen her to do this. Don't let her suspect anything," the Underworld Emperor said with a smile while looking outside the window. "Life in the underworld is indeed a bit lonely. It's not a bad thing to have such a beautiful woman bewitching me. At least she makes me feel comfortable. Qian Jun, do you think I'm right?" "Hee hee." Qian Jun laughed heartily. He touched the 12 armored underworld generals on the painting, a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "Underworld Emperor, do you have any other orders? I'll go find them if there's nothing else." "You should have heard what I said to her." The Underworld Emperor's eyes suddenly grew deep as he said, "You have experienced what happened in the human world back then. Keep an eye on that stupid woman. Don't let her do anything stupid. If the heavenly punishment comes, none of us will be able to withstand it. I'll forget about the last time she sent someone out without my permission. If she dares do it behind my back again, it's useless to keep her alive. You destroy her cultivation and throw her to the endless dark sea. You don't need to report to me in advance." "Yes, Underworld Emperor." Qian Jun cupped his hands and turned into a silvery light, disappearing outside the window. Chapter 644. A figure flew above the cornucopia and was stopped by more than a dozen figures when he flew to the Di-Rong Nation's Ice Palace shop. Yu Qianqiu showed a baffled expression and asked, "Why are you stopping me?" Mu Lianqiu, who was leading the law enforcement team, gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly, especially during the cornucopia meeting. Yu Qianqiu, don't tell me you don't know this rule. Bullsh** T rule. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, but he said in surprise, "There's such a rule? I really don't know." Mu Lianqiu's expression was dark and gloomy. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in silence for a while before saying slowly, "I hope there won't be a next time." Definitely, definitely. Yu Qianqiu chuckled. Mu Lianqiu waved his hand and the dozen people quickly flew back. Yan Zhuixing was already standing in the backyard of the Ice Palace shop after hearing the news. He stared at Yu Qianqiu in the air with a smile and said, "Brother Yu, welcome. Please come down quickly for a chat." Yu Qianqiu landed and cupped his hands. "How would I dare not come when Brother Yan invited me?" The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They were polite, but they each had their own ulterior motives. None of them were good people. Yan Zhuixing looked at the sky and said, "Brother Yu is a hero no matter where he goes. Yan Zhuixing is really envious that you don't even care about the rules of the cornucopia. It's fine if you don't abide by this kind of rule that only benefits a few people," Yu Qianqiu said sarcastically. "Even if I abide by it, no one will say anything good about me." "Ah, Brother Yu is indeed honest." Yan Zhuixing nodded and praised him. "I don't have any good points, but I like to speak the truth." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand without a care in the world and sternly said, "Brother Yan, let's not beat around the bush. Are you buying the 7-star blood orchid or not? It's not convenient to talk here, right?" Yan Zhuixing looked around and raised his hand, "Please come upstairs." Yu Qianqiu glanced upstairs and knew that similar buildings had a soundproof formation. He touched his chin and said, "Is there an ambush waiting for me?" Yan Zhuixing smiled and said, "Brother Yu has Senior Wen's support. Why should I be afraid? Please." The two of them acted like old friends, smiling side by side as they went upstairs. Just as Yan Zhuixing pushed open a door, he suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from upstairs. Both of them were shocked, especially Yu Qianqiu, who quickly put up his guard. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. He couldn't be bothered with him anymore and rushed upstairs. What the hell? Could it be a trap? Yu Qianqiu was confused. He was worried that it was a trap, but he couldn't help but rush upstairs. When he reached the top floor, he found the room where the scream came from and carefully pushed the door open. Bing Qingzi, Man Hu, and Yan Zhuixing were staring at a disciple who was rolling on the ground. The three of them looked at Yu Qianqiu who came in, but no one cared about him at this moment. There were two other disciples beside him who seemed to be panicking. Yu Qianqiu plucked up his courage and walked to Yan Zhuixing's side. The disciple rolling on the ground was emitting green smoke as if he was burning. Wrinkles gradually appeared on his face and he was aging at a visible speed. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He couldn't help asking in a low voice, "Brother Yan, what's going on? Could it be that your ice palace is enforcing some sect rules and punishing disciples?" Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "It's the 7 treasure pills sold by the World Chamber of Commerce. There's something wrong with it." Yu Qianqiu was dazed. He knew what the problem was, so he quickly shut his mouth and pretended that he knew nothing. All of a sudden, a huge and threatening aura spread out, forcing them to take a few steps back. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, making them feel like they were in a world of ice and snow. Bing Qingzi waved his sleeve, and the disciple rolling on the ground floated up into the air. Bing Qingzi's fingers were like the wind, shooting dozens of white light into the important acupoints of the disciple. Then he pushed out a white mist from his palm and wrapped the disciple up. Apparently he was treating the disciple. However, to everyone's surprise, the disciple's screams seemed to be even more painful. It was sharp and ear-piercing as if he was being cut into pieces. Bing Qingzi's face was shocked. The white mist quickly retracted, and the disciple slowly landed on the ground, twitching and rolling on the ground. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What a powerful poison. It can even burn Zhen Yuan. Bing Qingzi was shocked. He immediately turned around and stared at Man Hu, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" Man Hu was at a loss and said in panic, "Master, I also don't know what's going on. After I bought the elixir from the treasure tower, I came back directly." Bing Qingzi teleported to the side of the other two disciples. He grabbed their wrists and examined them. After a while, he loosened his grip and stared at Man Hu coldly. "It's the same 7 treasure elixir. Why are they fine? When the two disciples heard that they were fine, the fear on their faces turned into relief. Master, I really don't know what's going on. Man whose face turned bitter. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two and found that one had just reached the core formation stage, and the other had just reached the nascent soul stage. He knew what was going on. He couldn't see the cultivation of the person on the ground, but he must have used the 7 treasure elixir to break through to the tribulation stage. Yan Zhuixing took a step forward and said with a frown, "Eldest senior brother, did you meet anyone on the way here? Could you have been replaced?" "I didn't." Man who recalled and said, "I know that many people covet this thing. Moreover, our ice palace got the biggest share and bought 100 of them. After I got it, I didn't stay any longer and came back directly. At most, I met someone I knew on the way and nodded to say hello. Moreover, the elixir was in the storage pouch and never left it. It's impossible for it to have been replaced." Yan Zhuixing looked at Bing Qingzi, whose eyes were flickering, and said, "That's strange. Eldest senior brother definitely wouldn't harm a fellow disciple. However, it's reasonable to say that the World Commerce Association wouldn't sell poison. Otherwise, they would be going against the whole world. No matter how powerful the World Commerce Association is, they would still be courting death. Yin Baikong wouldn't do such a stupid thing." He stared at the disciple on the ground and said, "Could it be that he was poisoned before this? Otherwise, why are they fine and only he is?" Yu Qianqiu listened to his logical analysis and was speechless. At this moment, the disciple on the ground also stopped. In just a short while, he had become an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He was unreasonably skinny and looked haggard. He stretched out his hand towards Bing Qingzi, but unfortunately he couldn't move. With 2 lines of tears on his face, he said in a hoarse voice, "Ancestor, ancestor, save me." Bing Qingzi walked over with an ashen face and squatted down to check his body. After a long time he stood up and sighed, "He's fine now. However, his dantian is severely damaged. He can no longer cultivate in this lifetime. You two carry him away and take good care of him." The last sentence was said to the 2 disciples beside him. The 2 disciples didn't dare to hesitate and carefully carried the person away. Yu Qianqiu was a little surprised. He really couldn't tell that Bing Qingzi treated his disciples so well. However, he felt that it was a little strange. Logically speaking, those who took the fake limit-breaking pill should be dead after breaking through to the tribulation passing stage. Could it be that Qin Feng's alchemy skills were not up to par and the medicinal effect was discounted? What he didn't know was that cultivators who used the fake limit-breaking pill to break through to the tribulation passing stage would indeed be poisoned to death. However, it was also related to the amount taken. Only when the poison accumulated would it be able to kill a person. As for the disciple just now, he had only consumed a pseudo-restriction breaking pill, so he was half dead. In fact, Qin Feng's alchemy skills were already strong enough. How could an alchemist who could refine a pill with pill halo be weak? "Master." Man who walked in front of Bing Qingzi and didn't know what to say. Bing Qingzi coldly glanced at Yu Qianqiu and muttered, "There is still no conclusion to this matter and it needs to be investigated. I will go and see if the others have the same reaction." With that, he disappeared. As soon as Bing Qingzi left, Yu Qianqiu felt the pressure was greatly reduced. He became lively and said, "I say, State Preceptor Man who, why did you come here to join in the fun instead of being a State Preceptor? Look at what happened now. You almost killed someone. Fortunately, you didn't kill anyone or else you would have committed a great sin." "You." Man who angrily said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't be hypocritical here. Haven't you killed a lot of people?" "Do I need to be hypocritical? I admit that I have killed a lot of people. Maybe I will kill even more people." "That's not right." Yu Qianqiu suddenly said suspiciously, "Listening to what you said, could it be that you want to kill that disciple just now?" Man who almost choked to death. How could this label be randomly put on him? He immediately flew into a rage and said, "I want to kill you. Are you trying to scare me?" Yu Qianqiu raised his sleeves and sneered, "Why don't you give it a try and see who will kill who? Brother Yu, what you are doing is a bit unkind. You are rubbing salt on the wound." After Yan Zhuixing warned Yu Qianqiu, he immediately pulled back the rioting man who and comforted him. "Eldest senior brother, don't worry. Master and I both believe in you." Yu Qianqiu laughed and waved his hand, "Take it as me talking too much. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I say, Brother Yin, are you going to buy the 7-star blood orchid or not? If not, I will leave." "Buy, of course I will buy." Yan Zhuixing pressed on Man Hu's shoulder, indicating him to restrain himself. Then he turned around and asked, I wonder how many 7-star blood orchids brother Yu has? You don't have to worry about this as long as you can afford it. Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and asked, Brother Yin, I have a question but I don't know if it is convenient for me to answer it. What do you want so many 7-star blood orchids for? He knew that it was useless to ask, but he still couldn't help but want to ask. Sure enough, Yan Juexing said perfunctorily, we naturally have our use. Brother Yu doesn't have to worry about this. Yu Qianqiu looked him up and down and said with a smile, I heard that Brother Yin has a unique martial art. Is it related to the martial art that you are practicing to buy so many blood orchids? Chapter 645. Yan Juexing's eyes were slightly cold and he said in a deep voice, Brother Yu, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. This matter has been proven to be false. It's better not to mention hearsay again so as to avoid misunderstanding. This matter has become a big deal. I'm just curious, so I asked casually. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly and then asked, I wonder how many blood orchids Brother Yan wants to buy? When it came to business, Yan Juexing didn't care about him anymore. He said sternly, it depends on whether brother you can take care of the price. If it's cheap, buy more. If it's expensive, buy less. Since Brother Yan has spoken, for the sake of old friends, I will naturally take care of the price. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and thought for a while. The original price is 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones. If Brother Yan sincerely wants to buy, each one can be cheaper by 1,000 upper-grade spiritual stones. Man who snorted on the spot, something worth 1 billion is cheaper by 1,000. How can you say that? Yan Juexing pressed his hand to him and said with a fake smile, Brother Yu really thinks highly of me. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me. To make a long story short, I want 7 blood orchids. I wonder if Brother Yu has brought them? Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, 7 blood orchids are worth 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. Does Brother Yan bring enough money? Yan Juexing knew that this guy was a sticky candy, and it was meaningless to continue. So, he took out 2 storage bags and handed them to him generously. Yu Qianqiu took them and checked the scene. After counting them, there were indeed 1 billion upper-grade spiritual stones. It seemed that the other party had already prepared to buy 7. After putting away the storage bags, he fiddled around for a while before returning another storage bag. Here are 7,000 upper-grade spirit stones. You can count them. Yan Juexing didn't think it was too little. He took the bag and put it away without looking at it. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and placed 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground, saying, 7 pots of blood orchids, please inspect the goods, Brother Yan. The moment the 7 pots of blood orchids were placed out, Yan Juexing's eyes turned as cold as the stars and killing intent surged. Man who immediately shouted, Yu Qianqiu, are you playing with us? Great Imperial Advisor Man who, what do you mean by that? Yu Qianqiu pointed at the 7 pots of blood orchids on the ground and said in surprise, these are genuine 7-star blood orchids. Don't you know what they are? The 7-star blood orchid on the ground seemed to have no eyes. Dozens of slender leaves grew out of it like a pile of weeds. If it wasn't for its blood-red color and the faint smell of blood, it would be very difficult to associate it with the 7-star blood orchid. The most disgusting thing was that there was not even a shadow of an orchid. To be exact, it wasn't that he couldn't see it, but that it hadn't grown at all. Compared with the ones he sold at the stall before, it was completely a blood orchid seedling. Yan Juexing stared at the blood orchid on the ground and said indifferently, the 7-star blood orchid seedling has 10 leaves. After that, it grows 1 leaf every year. After 100 years, it blossoms and bears fruit. After another 100 years, the fruit ripens and falls. These 7 pots of blood orchid are at most 30 years old. It's too different from the century-old blood orchid that Brother Yu sold before. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with cold eyes and said, Brother Yu, aren't you going too far by doing this? Brother Yan, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand repeatedly and explained, the 10 pots of blood orchid that you saw before have been bought by someone. The rest of the goods are really not good, but these 7 pots are already considered good among the remaining ones. If Brother Yan is not satisfied, you can return it. I will never say no. He didn't sincerely sell the blood orchid to Yan Juexing at all. This time he came purely to see if Yan Juexing would buy it. Therefore he made a few pots of inferior goods. It was fine if the other party didn't buy it, but he couldn't give the other party good things. He wasn't the kind of person who would leave trouble in the future just to make money. He just wanted to find an excuse to make the sale fail. Man who sneered, full of nonsense. I don't think you are sincere at all. There's no need to return it. Yan Zhuixing put away all the 7 pots of blood orchid. Man Hu immediately transmitted his voice. 8th junior brother, what are you doing? This blood orchid hasn't grown at all. Before he finished speaking, he heard Yan Zhuixing's voice transmission. Eldest senior brother, you also know that this guy has no sincerity to sell to us. But I'm not a fool. There is a secret method in the demonic book to accelerate the blood orchid's ripening. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to buy it even though he deliberately made things difficult for them. He faintly felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but smile. Brother Yin, you make me feel embarrassed. How about this? I'm also an honest person. I can't bear to see others suffer losses. You can return it first. I will definitely find you 7 pots of mature blood orchid within 3 days. Once he cheated the blood orchid back into his hands, there would be many reasons not to sell it in the future. Yan Zhuixing smiled faintly. That's too troublesome. If you really feel embarrassed, you might as well return the spirit stones to me. What do you mean? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Look at my eyes and you will understand. The faint smile on Yan Zhuixing's face turned indifferent. He said word by word, magic eye ecstasy. Yu Qianqiu was confused by him. He didn't know what he was talking about, so he looked at his eyes subconsciously. Suddenly, the other party's cold eyes instantly turned blood red. It was extremely demonic and dazzling. The red light flashed and pierced one's heart. There was a boom in his head. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that something was wrong. He wanted to look away, but he realized that he wasn't listening to his commands. His consciousness instantly blurred. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was in a sea of blood. His limbs were entangled by the blood vines that extended out from the sea of blood. He couldn't move at all. King Yan Zhuixing, you actually dared to trick me. B*****, just you wait. Yu Qianqiu cursed. Seeing that he couldn't move his limbs, he immediately wanted to use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He wanted to teleport away and settle the score with Yan Zhuixing later. However, what terrified him was that he couldn't use his divine sense to contact Utopia. He couldn't even circulate the quintessential essence in his body. He quickly looked around and was alarmed. How could such a boundless sea of blood appear in the treasure basin? Clearly this wasn't reality at all. Could it be that my sea of consciousness is trapped by this sea of blood? Brother Yin, let's talk nicely. There's no need to be angry over a few pots of blood orchids. As long as you let me out, I can have as many blood orchids as you want, and I'll guarantee the quality and quantity. Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped in the sea of blood, shook his head and shouted. Previously he was still cursing, but now that he realized that there was nothing he could do, he immediately gave in. In his words, a wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. As long as there's life, there's hope. When Man Hu saw Yan Zhuixing use his demonic eyes to control Yu Qianqiu, he was stunned for a moment before he immediately laughed out loud. Yu Qianqiu, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Second junior brother, you can take revenge now. Man Hu couldn't hear the shouts in Yu Qianqiu's sea of consciousness, but Yan Zhuixing, whose eyes were shining with red light, could hear it. He sneered. Brother Yu, don't you think it's too late for you to say this now? Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped, immediately heard the rumbling sound coming from the sea of blood. It came from all directions, but he didn't know where it came from. He cursed the despicable and shameless beast in his heart. Sure enough, I guessed right. You've practiced some evil cultivation method. It's not too late, not too late. We can talk slowly and raise any conditions. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Yu Qianqiu laughed. However, his eyes were looking around in vain, trying to find a way to escape. I really want to have a good talk with you, brother Yu. However, it will have to wait until you become my puppet. Otherwise, brother Yu's endless tricks will make me worry. The demonic red light in Yan Zhuixing's eyes suddenly brightened. His words were like a devil's voice. Yu Qianqiu, from today onwards, I, Yan Zhuixing, will be your master. From today onwards, you will follow my orders. In the vast sea of blood, 7 blood snakes suddenly drilled out and hissed. They raised their slender bodies and let out a long hiss. Then they quickly broke through the blood waves and swam over. Fuck. What the hell is this? Yan Zhuixing, stop right now. Otherwise, sooner or later, I'll make you. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish his words, he was unable to make another sound. The heads of the 7 blood snakes became thin and drilled into his 7 orifices. Yu Qianqiu's body twisted and stopped moving. The blood vines that were binding his limbs loosened and retracted back into the sea of blood. They turned into 7 blood snakes that were connected to his 7 orifices in the sea of blood. The demonic red light in Yan Juexing's eyes quickly disappeared. He nodded to Man Hu and smiled. He's under my control. From now on he will listen to my orders. Yu Qianqiu, who was opposite him, stood there motionlessly with dull eyes. Kill him to avenge second junior brother. Man Hu laughed cruelly. His smile was full of joy. Yan Juexing frowned and quickly stood in front of him. He said in a deep voice, Eldest senior brother, don't act rashly. It's not the time to kill him yet. When Lan Feng and the others must know that he's here. If we don't see him, they'll definitely come to us for revenge. Don't cause trouble for Master. Man Hu was startled and resentfully gave up on the action of revenge. Although he was eager for revenge, he knew that Yan Juexing's words made sense. Now was not the time to act rashly. Master couldn't deal with Wen Lanfeng's strength. At this moment, a golden light broke through the boundless sea of blood. The sea shone brightly and a golden sun rose. The moment it rose, it immediately suppressed the surging waves of the sea of blood to the point that it couldn't move. A golden light beam shot out from the sun and shone on Yu Qianqiu's 7 orifices that were sealed by the 7 blood snakes. The 7 blood snakes turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianqiu's 7 orifices also began to emit black smoke. The smoke became fainter and fainter. Soon it disappeared without a trace. Yu Qianqiu's nostrils twitched. He opened his eyes and his gaze gradually became lively. As the golden light beam retracted, the entire sun suddenly erupted with a golden light. The boundless sea of blood couldn't withstand a single blow. Under the illumination of the light beam, it was like a righteous spirit looking down on the world. All demons and evil cultivators had nowhere to hide. They were all killed while wailing. The boundless sea of blood quickly rose into black smoke and dissipated. The sea of blood dissipated, revealing the vast and boundless sky of the universe, dotted with stars that would last for eternity. Chapter 646. The sea of blood in front of him suddenly turned into the stars of the universe. This kind of eternal brilliance made Yu Qianqiu somewhat dumbfounded. This was not the first time he saw this phenomenon. He remembered that the first time he saw it was in the 9th Netherworld cave. At that time he was also in a predicament. So it was not a dream last time? He looked at the endless starry sky in disbelief, and the countless stars seemed to be staring at him. This illusion disappeared slightly, and in front of him he saw Yan Juexing and Man Hu talking with confidence and composure, discussing how to play with him. Bastard. Fortunately, this old man is blessed with a good life. He actually wants to use me as a puppet. Evil demon bastard, I will eliminate the demon today. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his teeth itched, but he did not act rashly. He first tried to circulate the true essence in his body. Normal. He then used his divine sense to connect with Utopia, and it returned to normal. Man Hu stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Junior brother, is he really completely under your control now? Yan Juexing smiled somewhat proudly. Yes, his sea of consciousness and primordial spirit have been controlled by my devil eye. As long as it is my command, he will definitely obey. But if he goes back with this stupid appearance, it is impossible for Wen Lanfeng and the others to not see some clues. I am afraid that even if he goes back alive, it will still be troublesome. Man Hu suddenly revealed a sinister expression. It is better to just kill him and end all troubles. Kill your mother. Yu Qianqiu almost jumped up to beat Man Hu, but he still endured it and continued to maintain his stupid appearance, wanting to probe the two beasts. Yan Juexing slightly frowned. Senior brother, don't be impatient. Revenge is not urgent. Although my cultivation is not enough to control someone with a higher cultivation than me, Yu Qianqiu's cultivation is more or less the same as mine. After being hit by my demon eye ecstasy, he has become my puppet. Even with the help of a late soul transformation expert, he cannot escape my control. Without a way to remove it, it is difficult to break the demon barrier in the sea of consciousness. As long as he is still under my control, it is easy to kill him. Even if I ask him to commit suicide, he will do it. Demon eye ecstasy, soul involuntarily. As long as I awaken the control of his consciousness, even if I let him go, he will look the same as usual. It will be very difficult for others to notice anything. Demon eye? Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such an evil spell. I didn't expect the demon eye to be so powerful. Man Hu exclaimed in surprise and said with some joy, So, we can place an informer around Wen Lanfeng. He can be of great help at the critical moment. That's one of the reasons why I haven't killed him yet. Yan Zhuisheng stared at Yu Qianqiu and sneered, "This brat has always been elusive. Who knows how many secrets he is hiding? I have to interrogate him properly." "Not bad." Man Hu clapped his hands and praised, just in time to ask him where he got so many 7-star blood orchids. Seeing that he had figured it out, Yan Zhuisheng was finally relieved. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, let me ask you, where are the blood orchids that you previously sold?" Yu Qianqiu was happy in his heart and replied with a dumbfounded expression, "I sold them all." "Why is the answer the same as before?" Yan Zhuisheng frowned slightly and felt that something was wrong. He didn't believe that this guy who was full of nonsense was telling the truth. He paused and asked, "Who did you sell it to?" "Niu Yud." Yu Qianqiu replied. Yan Zhuisheng and Man Hu looked at each other. Both of them had a lingering fear of Niu Yud, this unfathomable and mysterious figure. Yan Zhuisheng asked, "Why did he buy the 7-star blood orchids?" "He said that he can't let the 7-star blood orchids fall into the hands of that little bastard called Yan Zhuisheng. Otherwise he will harm the world sooner or later." Yu Qianqiu replied. The two of them didn't care about this scolding. Instead they felt a chill down their spine. It seemed that Niu Yud had really seen through Yan Zhuisheng's background. He could even see that he needed the 7-star blood orchids. Yan Zhuisheng immediately asked, "Do you know who that Niu Yud is?" "An immortal from the immortal world." Yu Qianqiu said ignorantly. "An immortal?" The two of them couldn't help but exclaim. Yan Zhuisheng asked again, "How do you know that he is an immortal from the immortal world?" Yu Qianqiu replied, "I accidentally summoned him from the immortal world at the immortal ascension stage in the fog forest." The two of them looked at each other. They had heard Bing Qingzi say that there might be an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest, but they didn't expect it to be true. Man Hu couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianqiu, is the treasure left behind by the Myriad Swords demon monarch real?" "It's fake." Yu Qianqiu replied casually. Who knew that this casual remark of his would cause trouble? Yan Zhuisheng squinted his eyes and stared at Yu Qianqiu. He said word by word in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, I order you to commit suicide immediately to atone for your crime." Man Hu looked at Yan Zhuisheng in astonishment. He didn't know why Yan Zhuisheng would suddenly say something like this. Yan Zhuisheng was just counting the benefits of keeping Yu Qianqiu alive. Now that Yu Qianqiu is of great use, why does he want to kill Yu Qianqiu? What he didn't know was that the person controlled by the demonic eye would only listen to one person. Logically speaking, in such a muddle-headed state, it was impossible for Yan Zhuisheng to reply to him. Naturally, it aroused Yan Zhuisheng's suspicion. However, Yan Zhuisheng wasn't so sure. After all, he didn't have much experience in using it. He didn't know if there was a problem somewhere, so he wanted to give it a try. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. He thought about it a few times, but he couldn't figure out where the problem was. Could it be that his reply to Man Hu gave him away? He was a little depressed. He wanted to play the fool and make use of the two of them, but it seemed like he couldn't make use of them. "Yes." Yu Qianqiu replied in a daze. He took out a big black saber from his storage bag. He raised the saber up high as if he was really going to commit suicide to atone for his crime. Suddenly Yan Zhuisheng's eyes opened wide and he quickly retreated. Yu Qianqiu raised his saber and chased after Yan Zhuisheng. "Dog, hand over your life." Everything happened so suddenly. One was prepared and the other was ambushed. Yan Zhuisheng couldn't dodge in time and was about to be slashed. As he retreated, he suddenly clapped his hands and shouted, "Demonic charm, doppelganger." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In a hurry, Yan Zhuisheng instantly split into three, and the three Yan Zhuisheng scattered like ghosts. Yu Qianqiu's eyes blurred. He was clearly about to slash his opponent, but who knew that his opponent would suddenly separate like 3 wisps of smoke. His sneak attack failed and he didn't know which one to chase. The 3 figures gathered behind him, and Yan Zhuisheng's original body was restored in an instant. Yu Qianqiu's intuition sensed the opponent's position, and he swept his saber behind him. At almost the same time, Yan Zhuisheng waved his fist that was surrounded by killing intent and shot over. He shouted, "Little devil fist." Man Hu, who was startled by the sudden change, immediately reacted after the two of them clashed. A cold light flashed out from his storage bag and shot towards Yu Qianqiu without hesitation. The flying sword was faster than Yan Zhuisheng's fist, and Yu Qianqiu spat on it. He changed the direction of his saber and slashed towards the flying sword. Dang! The flying sword was cut into 2 like tofu. The saber turned again to deal with the incoming fist, but it seemed to be a bit late. The black fiendish fist smashed onto the side of the saber. Bang! Yu Qianqiu's palm was numb from the impact, and he had no choice but to let go of the saber in his hand. Otherwise, he would definitely be injured if he forcefully held onto the saber with such a powerful force. Black pieces fluttered in the air, and the big black saber was actually shattered into hundreds of pieces by Yan Juexing's fist. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect Yan Juexing's fist to be so powerful. Seeing that Yan Juexing no longer had the saber in his hand, Man Hu shouted, "Profoundine palm." He teleported over and waved his palm towards Yan Juexing's head. Although it wasn't as powerful as his master's profoundine palm, as long as it hit Yu Qianqiu, the cold poison would be enough to make Yu Qianqiu lose the ability to resist. Devil's Claw. Yan Juexing's fist instantly turned into 5 malevolent claws, and each of his fingers instantly became thin and sharp. With 5 red rays, the claws whizzed over and joined hands with Man Hu to attack from the left and right. The three of them soared into the air and quickly exchanged blows. If Yu Qianqiu dared to be arrogant, he naturally had the ability to be arrogant. He wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he naturally had his own trump card. The word, "explode," popped out from his mouth. In that instant, Yan Juexing's pupils shrank as he sensed the terrifying aura that he had seen in the saber-drawing assembly. While he was still in the air, he shouted, "Go!" The 5 claws grabbed onto Man Hu's arm and burst forth with a powerful force, pushing him away. Yan Juexing then rapidly retreated in the air with his arms spread out like a bat. The instant Man Hu's body smashed through the wall, he personally witnessed the fragments of the big black saber explode on the ground. Intense black flames engulfed Yan Juexing in a sea of flames, and a cold and terrifying aura surged over Man Hu quivered from the cold and quickly teleported far away into the air. He exclaimed to the people below, "Junior brother." Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to let the power of the black flames spread too far, or it would definitely arouse the suspicion of Niu Yud and him. After the black flames exploded, he quickly retracted them back into his body. The instant he leapt into the air, although the entire shop wasn't on fire, it turned a deathly gray color and collapsed. He directly broke through the roof and leapt into the air. There was an uproar on the street. The people nearby all felt a sudden terrifying cold aura, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye, as though it was an illusion. Such a huge commotion immediately attracted the law enforcement guards led by Mu Lianqiu. They surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who was floating in the air. Mu Lianqiu shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, how do you explain this?" Yu Qianqiu ignored the law enforcement guards surrounding him and glanced coldly at Man Hu. Then he looked around and gathered his quintessential essence to speak loudly, "Yan Juexing, I know you are fine. Why are you hiding? Everyone didn't go all out just now. If you have the ability, come out and fight again. Let me have a taste of your demonic technique." His voice resounded in the surroundings. There was no reaction from Yan Juexing, but more and more spectators gathered on the ground. Seeing how condescending he was, Mu Lianqiu immediately said furiously, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you think the World Chamber of Commerce is? It's none of your business. If you don't want to die, then get out of my way." Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at him. He shook his sleeves and green lights flashed out from his sleeves like floating clouds and flowing water. Countless green flying swords circled around his body and dispersed. Chapter 647. The law enforcement guards surrounding Yu Qianqiu were forced away by the ever-growing group of flying swords. Mu Lianqiu's expression was gloomy, and he wished for nothing more than to take down Yu Qianqiu on the spot. However, he knew clearly in his heart that the targets of law enforcement and punishment didn't include people with deep backgrounds like Yu Qianqiu. It was fine to frighten ordinary cultivators, but once he acted rashly, the consequences weren't something he could bear. There were some things that everyone was well aware of, and it was important to give each other face. However, people like Yu Qianqiu did not follow common sense at all. He caused trouble again and again, treating cornucopia's rules like bullsh*t. The strict image that Mu Lianqiu had painstakingly built up for the world commerce was destroyed in one day. He unscrupulously tore down the shameful cover of strict law enforcement, allowing everyone to see the ugly face behind it. What rules? They were just bullying the weak. When encountering a powerful person, they immediately revealed their true colors. Yu Qianqiu had always scoffed at this broken rule, let alone now. A total of 2,000 green flying swords hovered in the air. The scene was truly spectacular. No one present had seen a person controlling so many flying swords at the same time. They were all dumbfounded and sighed inwardly. The number one expert below the soul formation stage was indeed not just for show. Actually, this was not the upper limit of what Yu Qianqiu could control. He had tried it at the Immortal Ascension platform. With his current early-stage tribulation passing cultivation, he could control 3,000 flying swords at the same time. However, it seemed that it was not stable to control it in a fight. He could only control 2,000 flying swords with ease. The brilliant green flying swords hovered in the air, forming a huge green halo. Yu Qianqiu stood in the center with a murderous aura as he swept his gaze around. He was really angry. His robe swelled up without any wind and fluttered in the wind. He did not restrain his murderous aura at all. He had almost died today. Yan Zhuixing's demonic technique was a great taboo to him. If he did not get rid of him before he matured, Yu Qianqiu would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. The enmity between the two sides was very difficult to reconcile. Sooner or later they would have to fight to the death. If he was allowed to grow, it was needless to say who would be the unlucky one. What made Yu Qianqiu the most unwilling was that the 7 pots of blood orchids were very likely to be of great benefit to Yan Zhuixing's demonic arts, yet he had to personally give them to him. Inside the Onyx Palace, a black light flashed and turned into the cold and noble Lady Blackpool. However, there was an irrepressible anger in that noble temperament. Even though she was suppressing it, others could still see that she was in a bad mood. Dragging her long skirt, she climbed up to the back seat in the middle of the hall. Her phoenix eyes glanced at the maids on both sides who didn't dare to come close, and she knew that she was a little angry. After slowly calming himself down, he called out, "Fei Feng." Maid Fei Feng walked to the back seat and bowed. "Madam, what can I do for you?" Madame Blackpool said indifferently, "The Underworld Emperor asked me to send someone to the human world to find the lost door knocker. Who do you think should go?" She had no hope of getting out, so she didn't want to get involved in this matter. However, the Underworld Emperor ordered that even if she had to deal with it, she had to pretend to do it. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain to the Underworld Emperor when he asked. Fei Feng bowed and said, "Since it is the Underworld Emperor's order, we should send a smart and capable person. Any commander of the army of the Dark Underworld can be qualified for this position." Enough. Madame Blackpool suddenly slammed her palm on the armrest of the back seat. No one knew where the anger came from. Fei Feng knelt down and kowtowed in fear, saying, "Fei Feng said something wrong. Please forgive me, madam." Madame Blackpool was about to say something disrespectful, but she forcefully suppressed it. She looked around, wondering if there were spies of the Underworld Palace here. She put on a smile and said, "You didn't say anything wrong. But the army of the Dark Underworld is responsible for suppressing the riots and maintaining the stability of the Underworld. It can't be mobilized easily. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, I can't explain to the Underworld Emperor." Yes. I didn't consider it thoroughly," Fei Feng said while kowtowing. But she murmured in her mind that there were tens of thousands of commanders in the army of the Dark Underworld. What could mobilizing one commander do? Madame Blackpool said with a smile, "Moreover, it is not necessary to mobilize a commander in the human world. Where's Lu Mei? I haven't seen him for a long time." "Lu Mei offended Madame last time and was sent to prison by Madame," Fei Feng reminded her carefully. "It is just a small matter. He has been punished. Let him out." Madame Blackpool waved her hand and said, "Tell him to come see me as soon as possible." Fei Feng took the order and left. Soon she came back with a tall and thin man with green eyebrows and a pale face. As soon as the man stepped into the palace gate, he ran to the back of the palace and kneeled down, crying, "Madam, your servant knows his sin, your servant knows his sin, your servant should not have made Madam unhappy." His voice was sharp and shrill, there was a hint of an eunuch's voice. "All right, don't cry. I forgive you. Come here." Madame Blackpool waved her hand with a smile. Lu Mei immediately crawled to the back seat. He hugged her legs and massaged them gently. He looked up at her and smiled through his tears. "Madam, thank you for your forgiveness. Madam, you don't know. I feel worse than death if I don't see you for a day. If you punish me again, please don't put me in prison again. I can't bear the pain of not seeing you. I would rather die at your feet." Madame Blackpool was amused by him and laughed. The haze in her heart disappeared. She then nodded and smiled. "I understand your loyalty. That is why I have a good task for you to do as a reward for your loyalty." "No, I am not going anywhere. I would rather die than leave Madam." Lu Mei hugged Madame Blackpool's legs and refused to let go. Madame Blackpool's phoenix eyes immediately turned cold. She said indifferently, "You dare to disobey me?" Lu Mei was startled. He let go of her legs and kowtowed repeatedly, "Madam, if you have any orders, just let me know. I will die 10,000 times for you." Flattery sounded nice, but it was impossible for him not to be afraid of death. How could a shameless person not be afraid of death in order to survive? That's right. Madame Blackpool recovered her smile and said, "A knocker and 2 animal teeth on the door ornaments of one of the underworld gates in the 72 world passages were stolen. The Emperor of the Underworld ordered me to send someone to the human world to find them. It is such a good task. I think only your loyalty can reassure me. Lu Mei, you won't disappoint me, will you?" Hearing this, Fei Feng glanced at him secretly but didn't dare to say anything. She didn't know what Madame Blackpool was thinking. How could she let a flattering man carry out the task ordered by the Emperor of the Underworld? She should at least find someone with a high cultivation state. Lu Mei looked up at Madame Blackpool in disbelief. It was indeed a good task. Who didn't want to go back to the human world after living in the dark underworld? But he knew what he was capable of. Besides, he had accompanied Madame for a long time, and he knew that Madame Blackpool wanted to travel to the human world. How could she give such a good opportunity to him? He couldn't figure it out. "What? You don't want to do it?" Madame Blackpool asked in a deep voice. No. Lu Mei waved his hands and said gingerly, "But my cultivation state is too low. I am only in the middle stage of the underworld warrior. I am afraid that I will ruin the Emperor of the Underworld's plan and implicate Madame." The cultivation states in the underworld were divided into 4 levels: the Underworld Warrior, the Underworld Saint, the Underworld Venerable, and the Underworld Emperor. Each level was further divided into 3 levels. The top ghost practitioners in the human world, even if they had the cultivation state of the Ghost Saint, were just mediocre in the underworld. They were at most the outstanding ghosts, but they couldn't form the underworld body. Once they formed the underworld body, they could travel between the 3 realms. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to expose themselves under the scorching sun. There was a big difference between the 2 levels. "You worry too much about this," Madame Blackpool said disdainfully. "In the human world, the top swordsmen are only in the last stage of the Huashan realm. In fact, they are not even in the early stage of the underworld warrior. You are in the middle stage of the underworld warrior, so you can be invincible in the human world. What is there to be afraid of?" Lu Mei's eyes brightened. How could he forget this after staying in the underworld for so long? His cultivation state in the underworld was not very high, but in the human world he was definitely a top-notch swordsman. He said with a silly smile, "I am stupid. Thank you for reminding me, Madam. I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam." Madame Blackpool glanced at him enviously and sent a message to him secretly, "You should take care of your business first. After that, I will allow you to stay in the human world for half a month. Remember, write down anything new and tell me about it when you come back." After sending the message, she said seriously, "Go find Fei Feng. She will tell you where you are going." After receiving the secret decree, Lu Mei kowtowed with a smile and said, "I will try my best to complete the task assigned by Madam." Then he left. In the hall of the Ghost King in the Chilly Wind Valley, Yuji and the others still had not figured out what happened in the 9th Netherworld cave last time. Seeing that there was no negative reaction after the incident, they gradually forgot about it. But they still had some doubts. But just as the ghost generals gathered to discuss the matter, outside the Ghost King Hall, a fierce wind suddenly blew violently again, causing the outside world to darken. Everyone was shocked. Yuji dashed out first and led a group of ghost generals to the outside of the 9th Netherworld cave again. However, just as everyone arrived, the violent and angry wind suddenly returned to normal, causing the group of people to scratch their heads in confusion. In the deepest part of the 9th Netherworld cave, behind the 1-meter-wide Netherworld gate, a green light flashed. Lu Mei suddenly appeared and looked around. After the Netherworld gate behind him closed slowly, he turned around and stared at the place where one of the knockers was missing. He laughed in a high-pitched voice, "How dare you? It seems that the cultivators in the human world are tired of living. How dare you steal the thing on the Netherworld gate? Today I will let you know my power when I come to the human world." Not only did he know how to flatter and boast, but he also had a serious and responsible attitude when doing things. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive under Madame Blackpool's feet until now. Starting from the Netherworld gate, he looked for clues of the theft bit by bit. However, he did not find anything special until he passed through the Netherworld Fire Sea and landed at the entrance of the cave. He was attracted by some words on the cave wall. Chapter 648. Predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. Nianfeng's eyes are sad. I was kind-hearted, so I dug a tunnel to make it convenient for descendants to enter and exit, leaping over 1,000 worries? Green Eyebrows was confused, not knowing what he meant. Nanhai Nongzhu came here. Yuqianqiu. There are quite a lot of people here. Lu Mei's eyes suddenly froze. There was a line of handwriting on the hard iron without any pause. Obviously it was written in one go. It could be seen that the person's cultivation was obviously higher than the previous two. He could not help but murmur, "The world is lonely and invincible, but I have no fate to ascend to heaven. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the world of immortals and wants to find a strong opponent. What a reckless human cultivator. How arrogant." He was already laughing sinisterly at the end of the sentence. By Changchun, the world is invincible. It seems that you are the one who stole the knocker. Ordinary people can't reach the gate of the underworld. Lu Mei laughed sinisterly. He had already found the target he was looking for. He turned into a green light and flashed out of the 9th netherworld cave. However, he hadn't gone far when he reappeared and stopped. He looked at the tunnel under his feet and then at the eye of the wind in front of him. After a moment of shock, he finally understood what the line of words meant. It turned out that someone had dug a tunnel in the netherworld cave and wanted it to be convenient for the descendant to enter and exit. Yuqianqiu? Another reckless guy. I didn't expect the human cultivator to be so arrogant that he dares to destroy the things in front of the underworld. After a sharp laughter, the green light floated up and directly passed through the eye of the wind and disappeared. Outside the 9th netherworld cave, everyone stared at the entrance for a long time. After a moment of hesitation, Cai Zhangfei and Zhang Ling suddenly cupped their hands and said to Yu Ji, "Madam, I would like to go to the 9th netherworld cave to find out what is going on." Yu Ji shook her head gently and said, "No need, you can't go deep inside. No one knows what is going on inside. Breaking in by force is tantamount to suicide. Let nature take its course. It will explode as long as it doesn't affect us." Before he could finish his sentence, he heard a gasp of surprise from the crowd. A green light flashed out of the cave and turned into a person floating in the air, looking around curiously. The person was tall and thin, wearing a brocade green robe. The most peculiar thing was that there was a pair of green eyebrows on his pale face. No one could see through his level of cultivation, and he came from the 9th abyss cave. Everyone looked at each other, and they had a faint guess that they did not dare say out loud. Beside the 1,000-mile lake of the Obedient Island, Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back, had been paying attention to the movements in the mirror. When he saw the green-robed man coming out from the 9 netherworld cave, he immediately raised his hand and put away the mirror. He disappeared without hesitation and flashed in the direction of the Chan Chili Wind Valley. On the cliff, Yu Ji gave Ghost General Zhang Ling a meaningful look. The latter took a step forward, cupped his hands and said, "May I know which expert has graced us with his presence in the Valley of Chili Wind?" The green-robed person ignored his question and coldly checked everyone's cultivation. He didn't find anyone worth mentioning. None of them seemed to be people who could easily leave words on the netherworld iron. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh in a shrill voice. What a group of pitiful people. After death, they didn't go to the underworld to serve the emperor of the underworld. Instead, they stayed in the human world and became neither human nor ghost. I am the underworld messenger. I have something to ask you. Who is your leader? Come out and answer. The underworld messenger? Everyone was shocked. Just as they had guessed, they all became uneasy. Although Yu Ji was afraid as the leader, others could retreat, but she couldn't. She squeezed out a smile and bowed. I am the Lord of Chili Wind Valley. What does the underworld messenger want to ask? O woman? The green-robed person glanced at the ghost generals. She didn't expect the leader to be a woman. A trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. She said indifferently, I ask you something. You have to answer honestly. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Let me ask you, do you know who stole the knocker from the gate of the underworld? Hearing this, everyone was shocked again. They didn't expect that someone would dare to steal from the gate of the underworld. Yu Ji forced herself to be calm and shook her head. We really don't know about this. The green-robed person snorted coldly. As the master of this place, how can you not know? Do you want me to punish you before you will tell the truth? Please calm down, underworld messenger. Yu Ji smiled apologetically. The gate of the underworld is a legendary thing to us. Nobody has seen it. With our cultivation, we won't be able to get there. If someone could get there, their cultivation would definitely be higher than ours. It would be a piece of cake for them to hide from our eyes and not be discovered. The green-robed person thought for a while and nodded slightly. This is the truth. I don't think you dare to lie to me. Let me ask you again. Who has the highest cultivation in this world? Who is invincible? Yuji subconsciously thought of Bai Changchun, but she didn't dare to speak nonsense. She replied again, Underworld Messenger, you don't know this. This place is called the Demon Ghost Domain. It is a place where demons and ghosts live together. We live here and never ask about the affairs of the human world. In addition, our cultivation is low, so we don't dare to ask. So, we really don't know who has the highest cultivation in this world. What a group of pitiful people. The green-robed person looked at everyone and shook his head with pity. It was as if he was showing off how happy his life in the underworld was. He then asked, Let me ask you again. Do you know where a person called Bai Changchun is? Hearing this, the ghost general suddenly felt a little uneasy. Green eyebrows glanced at them and saw everyone's actions. Then he laughed and said, It seems that you all know this person. I'll tell you the truth. This Bai Changchun is the biggest suspect for stealing the knocker. If you hide anything from me, I'll treat you as an accomplice and punish you severely. Tell me, where is this person? Yuji wanted to say that she didn't know, but everyone lost their cool. It was impossible for her to say that she didn't know. However, she didn't dare to reveal Bai Changchun's location. She rolled her eyes and said perfunctorily, This person has been here before and his cultivation is very high. She raised her hand and pointed to the west. Go west. There is a place where many soul formation experts live. I heard that person lives there. Her words were more or less a test. She deliberately said that there were many soul formation experts. She wanted to see how the underworld messenger would react. If he was afraid, then there was no doubt that this person was not a match for the torture envoy. At the same time, she could use the time when he was sent away to quickly rush to the torture envoy to report. With the torture envoy around, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, what she didn't know was that her random pointing had caused a lot of trouble for the group of soul formation experts in the treasure basin. The green-robed person looked to the west and nodded. Go west, right? I hope you didn't lie to me. Otherwise, think about the consequences yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she flew up to the sky and easily passed through the protective array. Once she flashed to the sky above the demon ghost region, she immediately raised her hand to cover her eyes. Under the strong sunlight, she felt really uncomfortable. After she got used to it, she cursed, Damn the sun. She turned into a green light and fled to the west. As soon as the green-robed person left, the ghost generals below immediately started discussing. Yuji was even more dazed. She said that there were many soul formation experts in the west, but the underworld messenger was still not afraid. Obviously, his cultivation was very high and he didn't care about the soul formation experts at all. If even the torture envoy was not a match for him, she would have to face terrible consequences. The ghost generals were not fools. They naturally knew the consequences of the madam's words. After a long silence, Zhang Ling walked over worriedly and asked, Madam, what should we do? When Yuji heard this, she quickly restrained her emotions and a confident look of encouragement appeared on her face. Lord Disciplinary Envoy is famous throughout the world, and his cultivation base is unfathomable. Don't worry everyone. I'll head to Obedient Island right now to report the details to Lord Disciplinary Envoy. Everyone looked at each other. Although she said that the other party was an envoy from the underworld, his cultivation was definitely not ordinary, so it was strange that they didn't worry. However, Zhang Ling cupped his hands and said with an unusually firm tone, I am willing to accompany you to Shuntian Island. Yuji smiled indifferently and nodded slightly. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Zhang Ling and the group of ghost generals kneeling down in terror and bowing. Greetings, Lord Disciplinary Envoy. Yuji suddenly turned around and saw an old man in a green robe standing behind her. He seemed to be staring at the entrance of the 9th Netherworld cave. Looking at his back, who else could it be but the torture envoy? She was so scared that she immediately knelt down and said, Yuji greets the torture envoy. Bai Changchun slowly turned around. His eyes were shining brightly on his thin face. He glanced at the people kneeling on the ground, and his gaze finally landed on Yuji, who was kneeling on the ground. With an emotionless tone, he asked, Where did the man in green go? Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that the torture envoy already knew what happened here. Otherwise, how could he know that there was a man in the green robe? Yuji immediately repeated the conversation between her and the man in the green robe in detail. She didn't dare to hide anything. Bai Changchun looked to the west and snorted expressionlessly, The underworld envoy? That's exactly what I want. As long as I'm here, How can you people from the underworld do as you please? Let me deal with you. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. A white hole appeared in the west corner of the protective formation, and then it slowly closed. The people kneeling down only dared to stand up after a long time. They all opened their eyes with lingering fear and disappointment. Thinking of the torture envoy's words, they were all speechless. The torture envoy was indeed the torture envoy. From what he said just now, he went to chase after the underworld envoy. In the treasure bowl, Yu Qianqiu, who was surrounded by a huge cyan halo, stood in the air. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. With a murderous aura, he shouted again, "Yan Juexing, if you still don't come out, prepare to collect your first senior brother's corpse." The onlookers were in an uproar. They once again witnessed Yu Qianqiu's arrogance. Man who was in the air, said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? If it wasn't for Senior when backing you up, we might not even know who would be collecting the corpse." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.